The Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Secretary, may we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Vore,
Present.
Commissioner Lawson,
Present.
Commissioner Cott,
Present.
Commissioner Cayley,
Present.
Commissioner Hosey, Commissioner Glick,
Here.
Commissioner Anselmi Dalton,
Here.
Dennis Pence here, Vice Chairman Choma,
Here.
Chairman Craig.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Select Water, would you like to call roll of your group? Right, thank you everyone for attending this afternoon. Hopefully be better prepared for tomorrow. One of the things I had asked Director Mead if we could take a few minutes and for the commissioners to maybe give a little introduction to the group and to ourselves, to each other, of our backgrounds, so that we can have a little bit of understanding and that the office have understanding of our expertise or non-expertise in areas regarding water. So with that, I would like to start on one end or the other. Maybe Commissioner Hosey would like to start.
Hello all, I'm Todd Hosey. I live on a ranch by Devil's Tower. I represent District 2. The ranch has various types of water rights, and I learned more yesterday than I've learned my entire life. So that's my expertise on water rights. That's all I have.
Hello, my name's Clinton Glick. Representing the Wind River District, closer towards well, it's pretty much the Wind River Reservation and then the Bighorn Basin area. So we're all kind of tied together. I live on a ranch close to Fort Washakie, Wyoming. Our family has 1,200 acres, something like that. And we got we run cattle and we raise some quarter horses. Thank you.
My name is Mark Cott. I live in Rock Springs. I'm a representative for District 4, Western Wyoming. I've lived and worked in Rock Springs for 46 years, most of that one way or another in water. Spent the majority of my career in county planning.
I'm Robert Choma, District 4 Commissioner. I've spent at least 15 years plus as the president of an irrigation district. I've also spent quite a bit of time as far as designing and installing public water systems and also operating public water systems.
Lee Craig, Division 3. I live and farm in Powell. I came to Wyoming from the dryland in Montana. We had a little bit of irrigated hay up there. Came down here to go to college and ended up staying. I worked for 34 years for U.S. Department of Agriculture Farm Service Agency. We were a sister agency to the previous Soil Conservation Service, now Natural Resource Conservation Service. We administered a program similar to our small water program. So I'm kind of familiar with the idiosyncrasies of that type of a program. Mostly it was on the farm in a little bit of a different focus than what our small water program does, but similar. Most of nearly all of my experience is irrigated agriculture now. I've been farming for about 35 years in irrigated agriculture and farm full-time now with my son-in-law. We grow sugar beets, dry beans, alfalfa, malt barley, oats, and grass seed.
I'm Dennis Pence, Water Division 3 from Fremont County, lifelong farmer, generational family farm. We raise sugar beets, malt barley, alfalfa, and some corn. And we're on the largest irrigation district in Wyoming, Minville Irrigation. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Lisa Anselmi Dalton, and I'm a commissioner at large. Unlike everyone else, I'm sort of like the Zsa Zsa Gabor of this set. I mean, I have cropland I own, but I don't do anything with it. They manage it for me. I am a hotelier and I'm an attorney. I did mergers and acquisitions, so I'm not an expert in anything that's probably that relevant here. My husband does have a bison ranch, and I did serve in the Senate, so I guess that's as much expertise as I have.
Good afternoon. I'm John Lawson. I spent about 39 years with the Bureau of Reclamation. One of the interesting stories is when when all the fights were going on back in late 80s and 90s over the North Platte, the project manager for the North Platte down here just quit and walked out the door. I happened to be in a meeting with the deputy commissioner and the regional director in Denver. And the deputy commissioner asked who would be stupid enough to come down here and take that job. And my regional director at that time, Roger Patterson, says, I'll tell you what, Lawson, you're going. And I've been here ever since. Okay. And enjoyed it. I retired from the Bureau, became a county commissioner for a while. And right now, most of my time is devoted to the commission here. Thank you.
I'm Ron Vore from Division 2, Sundance. Grew up on a poor dirt farm up on Redwater Creek and chased cows around for a while and got quite skilled at doing the lucrative job of digging post holes. And from there, went to the University of Wyoming and did graduate work in plant science and spent several years with plant science department doing research and was also with cooperative extension and been active in the family ranch operation ever since and still am to some degree. And then did some work for the state engineer and eventually water development with river basin planning and watershed studies primarily. And the last 10 years have been chasing grandkids around, watching football games and basketball, which is a full-time job for some of us, and working on fishery habitat improvement on Whitlock Creek up in the Bear Lodge mountain range. And now find myself a member of this commission and happy to be here.
My name is Ron Cayley. I'm a commissioner from Division 1, live here in Cheyenne, lived here pretty much my whole life. My background is I worked in water and wastewater laboratory treatment for 40 years here at Bopu, and ran for county commissioner in 2015, was elected. And when I decided to retire from everything, then Governor Gordon called me up and asked me to put in for this position, and how could I refuse, right? And then so retired from everything and came here, and now I'm on 2 or 3 different commissions, just loving it. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Director Mead, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're going to start off the workshop here with a couple of project updates. I think everybody knows the situation everyone's dealing with up at LaPrelle and LaPrelle Dam. So we have Casey Dorr, the chairman of the LaPrelle Irrigation District, and Corey Foreman with HDR. They're the consulting firm that's working on the design. That'll be up here. And Rod Cross with the district as well. One, come up too. You're good. What's up? You can come up. Okay.
Hello, everybody. My name is Casey Dar with Laprelle Irrigation District. Thank you very much for taking the time to hear about our update. We're very excited to give some positive news about all the progress we've made and how everything's going. So I'll turn it over to Corey.
Hello, my name is Corey Foreman. I'm project manager with HDR, working as the design engineering team with the district. Thank you everyone for the time today. And with that, we'll jump right into it. There we go. Sorry, little delay. There's a lot to cover. There's a lot to talk about on this project. And so today I'm going to try to find the right balance of giving a little bit of background, because some of you I know are new, at least to the commission or to the Select Water Committee. But really, the vast majority of my time is going to be focused on trying to give an update on the activities of the last 6 months. Because it's been a busy 6 months, as I think everybody's aware. So we'll have a very brief overview of the project, but really going to spend a little bit of time just showing you what happened for the dam removal process and give you an overview on how well it went. And then spend a fair amount of time giving an update on the dam replacement project and what activities are currently taking place. Really, I will give a little bit of background on the activities, leading up to the 30% design in advance of the 60% design phase, which is where we're at now. But we'll talk about the ongoing activities related to 60% design. We can talk a little bit about the contractor engagement process and give a little bit of a preview of our plans for moving forward through up until construction begins. The overview, I hope everyone's aware, we're talking about a reservoir just west of Douglas, just to the south of Ayers Natural Bridge Park, between Douglas and Casper. You can't see the reservoir from the interstate, but it's just right inside that ridge to the south of the interstate as you travel from Douglas to Casper. A little bit of background on the dam, just for everybody's kind of situational awareness. It's what's called an Amberson-style slab and buttress dam. Construction was completed in 1909, so it's been around for a while. It is a large structure. It has a crest height of about 135 feet high. It's about 325 feet wide, and it stores 20,000 acre feet. I think that's the important number to kind of remember as we talk about the replacement dam design. It is a high hazard dam. So in addition to, potential significant infrastructure downstream, really the critical aspect of the dam structure, what makes it high hazard is there's about a population of risk of about 500 people downstream of this dam. So safety is of the utmost concern when we're talking about the previous dam and as we design the new dam moving forward. And it is a privately owned structure by the Laprelle Irrigation District. It is not a Bureau of Rec or other owned facility. So to jump into the dam removal, I'm not going to go into all the background of what led to the breach order, but just to say that there was monitored crack movement on the existing structure late last summer that was noticed. Followed up with an inspection where we found significant cracking, including the one shown here on the slab of the upstream slab of the dam. That led to the state engineer's office issuing the breach order on November 1st, saying that a significant portion of the dam had to be removed by April 1st of this spring, in advance of the potential high runoff season coming out of the mountains. So November 1st, when that issue was ordered, that led to a lot of very quick work. First thing we had to do is decide and determine the removal limits for the dam, and it's really shown here on the screen. We came up with a plan to remove the bulk of the bulk of the dam, leaving it slightly higher on the right-hand side of the dam, as shown here, which is just right above the existing outlet works there, leaving the existing outlet works in place to help manage flows through the construction of the new dam. That was then a lower elevation on the left half side of the dam to just route any high flows that overwhelm the outlet capacity that would be routed through a channel over the existing structure. We left about 30 some feet of the existing dam in place, which corresponds to about the sediment level on the upstream side, because that was a concern to everybody. Is there is a tremendous amount of sediment in the existing reservoir. It has been in place for over 100 years. So by leaving it at 30 feet, it left the amount of water on the upstream side of that structure at a minimum less than 50 acre feet. So it's not a regulated structure, but it gave us a plan and a path forward to maintain, keep the sediment in place as one of the primary goals. And then we had to figure out who was going to remove the dam. So in parallel with designing the removal process, we had to select a contractor. Ultimately, we selected a joint venture of Big Sky Civil Constructors and Montana Civil Contractors. Some of you may be aware of some of their work. They are currently the contractor building Levitt Reservoir, which is another water development funded project. And so we signed the contract, we being the irrigation district, signed that contract, I think, about January 15th. So a lot of work happened between November 1st to get them on board mid-January. We received the FONSI finding a no significant impact from the Bureau of Rec on January 31st. That was really the notice to proceed for the contractor to begin construction. So here's what the reservoir, the dam, looked like on February 4th, before they started any work. This is the original form with the kind of rubble pile there on the right. They got to work, and their plan that they came to us with early on in the selection process was to do this in what they defined as 4 phases of removal, as outlined here. For everyone's reference, we worked with the state engineer's office, and the agreement was phases 1 and 2 had to be removed by April 1st to comply with that breach order issued by the state engineer's office. So phases 3 and then both sides of phase 4, 4A and 4B could be removed after April 1st and not be in violation of that breach order. So they got to work very quickly. On January 31st, they had to build access and get their equipment up to the dam. So that's what you see here. They have their working pad, their initial working pad in place by February 7th. This is the first day they started chipping away on the concrete. They had 2 long arm excavators, one 95-foot reach long excavator, another one that had a reach of 120 feet. And I believe that's the one shown here. Reached up with hydraulic shears and started chipping away on the buttresses. They also had jackhammer heads that they really used on the upstream slab, which was a lot stronger concrete than the 1909 concrete that was holding up the buttresses. By February 23rd, in just a couple of weeks, they had removed enough of phase 1 to get to the upstream side of the dam, and that's where work really started to progress at a faster pace. They were not working from below the dam, but could be upstream and put downward pressure on that slab as they removed it. And so I'm going to go, the rest of my slides here are just a kind of a time-lapse type presentation where I'll show you the photo and I'll show you the progress that's been made. Phase 1, that is really the downward movement and really going from left to right. You're going to see in the colors, that's all they had left of phase 1, other than the lower elevations where they had to get to the final designed elevation to meet the breach order. That's the box labeled to be removed. So as we move forward with these pretty quickly, a couple weeks later, this is what it looks like. They're really moving laterally into phase 2 at this point. They started phase 2 and just have a little bit to remove down to final elevation. That was on March 4th. March 15th, a couple of weeks before that April 1st due date. You can see they're continuing to move from left to right as you look downstream into now they have started phase 3. And I should point out that things were going so well that while they were building their working pad across the downstream face of the dam that you can see they're working on right there, they went ahead and removed phase 4A, which is technically ahead of schedule, just to help their workflow. So they were making really good progress. By March 15th, really all they needed to do is get down to that final grade elevation on phases 1 and 2. This is what it looked like on March 23rd, right before the due date. At this point, they were down to final elevation. They just had to do the channel shaping because the breach order said you had to be down to a certain elevation of removal for phases 1 and 2, but also required that the channel was shaped that you wouldn't be causing a lot of erosion or debris movement if a flood event occurred post April 1st. So by March 23rd, they really were focusing on the channel shaping. And that's what the channel looks like now through the existing structure to route those larger flows in a way that has large enough cobble size that you won't get significant debris movement through that over the top of the remaining structure. So on March 28th, our team verified that all work requirements had been completed in compliance with the April 1st due date, that really the threat of a catastrophic dam failure had been removed. By April 9th, then they're just cleaning up. At that point, they had just very little left of phase 4B right up in the corner. And that's what it looked like on April 28th. So at this point, construction has been essentially completed. I think I have a little zoomed out photo there. You can see the existing outlet works have been buried. Those pipes have been extended and routed into the channel. As of today, all of the water going through, of Laprelle Creek are going through that existing outlet structure in only higher flows that would ever go up and over the spillway crest now that we designed through that channel. So on April 28th, our crews went out there and verified substantial completion for the contractor, and for all practical purposes, a couple of little minor punch list items, clean up some remaining rebar that we were able to find around the site. But for all practical purposes, construction for the dam removal has been completed. Yeah, is there, at this point, I'm going to switch to the new dam construction. Is there any questions on the dam removal process?
Chairman. I have a question with dam removal. The new dam's going to sit in a different area, right? So you don't have to redo the structural integrity of the rock or anything.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Glick, that is correct. The new dam will sit about 200 feet downstream of the previous dam. And so that was one of the concerns. We did talk about that as we devised the plan. We did have vibration monitors out there about where the new dam is going to be sitting, just to make sure that construction activities didn't cause any damage to the rock that we'll be excavating for the foundation of the new dam. And essentially, and we expected this, their methods, we did not blast. It was a mechanical removal. And so any damage to the rock around the foundation of the new dam, we don't expect any. There was virtually no vibration that transmitted that far downstream.
Okay, thanks.
Corey, I have a question about the debris. Was there excess debris or was everything left right there in that cobble area?
Mr. Chairman, good question. Essentially, there was not any excess debris. We had enough storage space for the debris as we took it down in between the buttresses up to that lower 30 feet of the dam. So with their work pads and if I go up one slide, actually, you can see the kind of the access road that they built to get to the right abutment of that dam structure. They actually had to mine a little bit of additional rock off the side canyons, partly for the amount of material, more so for that. They just needed the concrete. The 1909 concrete was so weak. It just kind of exploded. It broke down into really fine chunks, small chunks. So we did augment and have to actually get some material from the side canyon walls just to stabilize everything. And everything was put right between those buttresses and in those piles.
So that's essentially acting as a riprap right now. For the future, will it be left and just be left in the bottom of the new reservoir?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. We're going to build a new reservoir. Our final inspection on April 28th, we flew a drone-based LiDAR survey of that. It served really two purposes. One was for the as-built or as-recorded drawing set for final construction of the removal process, but it also becomes our existing condition surface for the new dam construction. We are currently updating the original bathymetry of the reservoir with the new surface to account for potential storage lost, and that will be how we calculate the 20,000 acre feet of storage for the new dam. Will be to leave all of this in place.
So tongue in cheek, in about 100,000 years, it'll be an archaeological site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The replacement dam design update. Just a quick overview of what we're trying to accomplish here. Remember, when this is a replacement dam, as Commissioner Glick just asked about, it will be immediately downstream of where the existing dam previously sat, as shown on the figure on the right. Obviously, it was a big change in our design and our plans for constructability that we'll no longer have, as it's shown here, the existing structure. It's important to recognize that the new dam does not change the storage. The original dam was 20,000 acre feet. The new dam will be designed to hold 20,000 acre feet as well. And it is a sizable structure. It's about, this dam was higher than the other one, 165 feet high at the top elevation, because modern dam safety standards say it have to meet and be able to pass the PMF, the probable maximum flood. Potential maximum flood. And so that leads to an uncontrolled spillway width, much larger than the spillway of the previous structure of 160 feet wide. And that we're following best practices and the industry standard of care as we design the new structure moving forward. So the next couple of slides, I'm really talking about the work that's been done the last few years leading up to this point. We have done a considerable amount of site characterization with geophysical surveys, drilling, downhole surveys, lab testing of the materials there to help inform and guide the design of the new dam. There's whole presentations on each one of these slides. I will not get into that level of detail other than to say we did this work. We also, if you remember, created a physical model for the hydraulic design to design a flip bucket spillway and to evaluate scour potential downstream of the new dam with that flip bucket spillway. That's the figure on the right. And that, along with structural modeling, really led us to the 30% design package that was submitted for review to the State Engineer's Office, Water Development Office, and others in 2004. And so that 30% design included that hydraulic modeling results, structural modeling, geotechnical foundation design, access roads, and the material sourcing at a 30% level. So what we're really working on now is just advancing each one of these areas up to 60% and beyond. And so very similar to the last slide, what are we working on today? Well, a lot of work has been done in recent months to advance the 60% design and to create a interim design package that we submitted to the contractor, which I'm going to talk about here in just a moment who that is. The 60% design for geotechnical has really been essentially completed. Really on the screen here, I'm showing the foundation objective. It doesn't really show very well, but we have the final surface, we believe close to the final surface of how much material has to be removed to build a new dam. We're currently building the three-dimensional finite element model of the dam. That is the final level of structural modeling for stability, sliding potential, so on and so forth, and are engaged in active and conversations around the outlet works, what valves to use, how they're going to be configured, what are our power requirements, so on and so forth. And we are advancing the access road and mixed design aspects of the dam as well. The other thing not to lose sight of is there is an environmental process. The Bureau of Reclamation is the lead federal agency for this. The previous few years, we've done considerable and what we believe are essentially almost all of the environmental field surveys, biological, aquatic resources, and cultural resources surveys to inform the environmental assessment document. Prior to the dam removal, we had initiated the formal NEPA process with the Bureau of Rec, including having monthly agency coordination meetings with them, the Corps of Engineers, DEQ, and others. Agency scoping letters had been sent. The scoping process was complete prior to November of last year, and the cultural report was submitted to SHPO, and that we worked with them to decide if we were going to do a programmatic agreement or a memorandum of understanding. So we were working through all of those details, and that's we were working on the impact assessment, really writing and starting to write the environmental assessment document. A lot of that got put on hold because we had to write a brand new environmental assessment for the dam removal. So we have reinitiated this process, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. One of the key activities of the new year, once we got the dam removal process underway, we had to, if you remember, we had chosen to deliver this project with the CMAR project delivery method. CMAR is a collaborative project delivery method where the contractor is selected during the design phase. And so we initiated and went through that process earlier this year. I believe signed a contract on April 7th. The reason you do this is because it gives you better informed early costs and schedule understanding working with that contractor. So it's not just the engineer making estimates and guesses on what the contractor will bid and what their schedule will look like. We're actually working collaboratively with them to negotiate a guaranteed maximum price prior to completion of final design. And so this is kind of the structure that we have. We signed contracts for final design with the LaPrelle Irrigation District as a sponsor last November. I apologize, the Bureau of Rec bullet somehow got moved. Bureau of Rec ultimately is one of the funding agencies contributing $98 million to the project through the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is being routed through the Water Development Office to supplement state level funding, working with the district as the owner. Ultimately, design approval comes from the state engineer's office. RESPEC, and many of you know Pete Roush, who's kind of my partner on this project, working very closely. They are the owner's advisor. HDR is the design engineer. You have now Irrigation District has a third contractor with the CMAR. And so as I already alluded to earlier this month, well, we selected the joint venture of Big Sky Civil and Montana Civil to be the CMAR moving forward. They are the ones that just recently completed the dam removal process, same one currently building Levitt Reservoir. They were absolutely outstanding to work with during the removal process. They have a collaborative team that was easy for all of us to engage with and actively on the design project. And they came to us with an incredible proposal of their thoughts and plan for constructing the new dam. And so the Irrigation District made that decision in early March, ultimately executed the contract on April 7th. So since April 7th, we got right to work working with them. And candidly, their familiarity with the project really they were able to get to work literally on day one. Honestly, they started working even before that. They were already creating their plan. By the time April 7th came, we were well underway with moving forward with this collaborative project delivery. We started that with the pre-award meeting in Douglas, just introducing everybody to the team, setting goals of how we're going to work together. And then we had a design kickoff project meeting with the CMAR in Denver, and then that translated right into a design workshop for 3 days. Water Development, State Engineer's Office, and others all participated in this workshop that happened in mid-April, really to start advancing the design with contractor input. So what are the next steps and where are we at today? Well, the first step for one of the key first steps for the CMAR is to develop their first cut at the opinion of probable cost. They've already started that process they delivered a draft work breakdown structure of their construction process. They submitted that to us in draft form yesterday. We had a meeting on reviewing that earlier today while I was driving down here. And that will transition into their construction schedule and ultimately the construction sequencing to go right into their first cost estimate, which we expect sometime in June. We'll take that cost estimate, meet again in Denver, late August, early September to do another design workshop and a value engineering workshop. What do we like? What do we not like? What opportunities are there for cost savings? That will happen, like I said, here in a couple months. But more important and probably the critical path item for this project right now is that NEPA process. It went on hold with the dam removal. We had to shift gears and do a whole separate environmental assessment document for the Bureau of Rec. Field work has already been completed. As I said, there might be a little bit of cultural now that we have CMAR input on where they want to put their conventional concrete batch plant. But essentially, scoping has been completed. We are finalizing today the impact analysis and getting ready to submit an EA document, hopefully later this month, to the Bureau of Reclamation, which starts about a 4-month window between with public comment and agency review, 2 different agency review periods in there, targeting and hoping to have a FONSI sometime late September, early October to be able to do early work packages if so desired for the contractor and if it helps advance the construction schedule. So that was really step one for the contractor. They had to give us their plan for construction. So we had all of the impacts properly described in the environmental assessment document. So that's what we're working on right now. In conjunction with this, we are continuing to work on right-of-way and securing easements. We're well ahead of that process. There's really two access options for the dam coming through the existing access to the dam from the north. All of the easements for that have been secured. We're currently working and communicating with the landowners to come in from the south, which is our plan for delivering aggregate to the roller compacted concrete batch plant. And we are working with the landowners on what's called an options agreement. So even if we don't have the exact plan, we have everything negotiated. So when we have, okay, is it going to be here or 100 yards over, we can finalize the survey, the exact route later, but all of the paperwork has been agreed to in advance. With that, there are some state lands that we're working with. We will have to renew the temporary use permits that are already in place and expand the total size of the temporary use permits with the state lands department. So that goes to the schedule. This is my final slide. Really everything in color is the work we've been doing the last few years. I think what's important to everybody here is what are we doing in gray? That's the path moving forward. Like I said, we are, the NEPA is there in the yellow towards the top. Hopefully have a FONSI later early this fall. And this is very preliminary. We are working with the contractor on the construction schedule, but their plan as presented to us in the proposal phase, and that's being carried forward, is a 3-year construction window, significant construction starting in the spring of next year, ending in at the end of 2028, and working with them currently right now to identify any potential early work packages that could start, this fall around that FONSI schedule. And with that, I'd take any questions.
Have questions for Corey or Casey? John?
David, can I talk through this computer? Oh. So, yeah, can you hear me? Let me try this. I can't. Sorry. I don't remember this room being so small. Yeah. Now, you can hear me now? The question I've got is will the dam capacity be back to what it was in 1909, compensating for the sediment that you've lost some capacity because of sediment, I presume?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Eklund, it will be, we're designing the new dam to account for any loss for sedimentation. So we did do 2, maybe 3 years ago, we did a new bathymetric survey of the reservoir, and that is the basis of our volume calculation. So we are designing the new dam to be right at 20,000 acre feet, again, to account for any lost sediment storage through sedimentation in the past.
Okay, that's what the original reservoir was. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Clinton?
I have a question about the spring runoff. Is do you guys have like a warning system if the spring runoff gets to be too much cubic feet per second it starts going over the banks of the
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Glick, yes, we do. We have the Converse County Commission or Conservation District has put in an advanced early warning system that has several monitors throughout the creek. And then we have worked with the Sheriff's Department to initiate an alert response that anytime that we reach a dangerous flood level, they would be notified.
and then and I know it's good to leave the sediment in the bottom of that reservoir because it creates like a natural dam. So I think it's a good idea to keep it in there. Thanks.
Other questions? I have a couple questions. When we toured the dam several years ago now, on our fall tour, the original dam, there was in the outlet works, there was some construction at that time back in 1909 for power generation. I don't know that it was ever utilized. Is there going to be any power generation opportunity with this new dam?
Okay. So I believe that that has been researched extensively when we went through our planning phase for this project, and it wasn't deemed viable because there wouldn't be a consistent enough large volume of flows to actually benefit from it.
Okay. And I also was curious about water rights. The water rights below the dam, are they a single priority, everything tied to the reservoir, or are there various water right dates on the La Pearl Creek itself?
So on the Pearl Creek, there's what's called carrier rights, and they're at a date that they get priority. All the carrier rights do. And then after the carrier rights, then the dam rights are 1909, correct? And so everybody's equal of the 1909 within the system, but the carrier rights do get preference.
So there may be a few people that still will have a little water later in the year. Yeah. And then the last question is regarding the kind of a follow-up with Representative Eklund's question regarding the sediment and having to increase, probably raising the height of the dam a little bit in comparison to the previous one to have the same acre feet capacity. So that would include an increase the pool size. So with that, I'm assuming, I'm making some assumptions, so cut me off here if I'm wrong, but by doing that, is that some of the easement work that you had to do because you would cover a little bit larger area, or?
Mr. Chairman, good question. No, actually, by moving it downstream, we gain about 200 acre feet of storage. And so right now it's looking like the new dam spillway will be about 3/10 of a foot lower than the spillway of the previous structure. So the easement work we're doing really is just to allow access, construction access through the existing reservoir. So we do have to cross off Highway 91, which is on the upstream side of the dam, cross a little bit of uplands on private land to get inside the existing reservoir bed, and then they'll haul the aggregate up to the batch plant, which will be immediately downstream of the new dam structure.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with questions? Anyone online? Okay, thank you.
Just want to say again, thank you guys. We appreciate you very much taking the time to listen to our spiel, and we appreciate all the help you've given us. Have a good day.
All right, Mr. Chairman, the next one we're going to hear an update on is the Goshen Irrigation District Tunnels Project. And HDR is involved in that one as well. So I think Corey's going to stay close, and we've got a few others that can introduce themselves when they get up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for having us here today. I'm Kevin Strecker, General Manager, Goshen Irrigation District. With me today, I have Marcus Kroll, Project Manager for design team from HDR, and Corey Foreman. Sorry, I don't know your title, official title, but Corey Foreman from HDR as well. And also with me today, I have Ray Lind. He's our vice president on our board, and Patrick Zimmer, our counsel, and also a GID landowner. So I guess with that, so I guess our overall agenda here, do a little bit of project background. I know some of you are pretty aware of our project, but for some of the newer people, we'll do a little project background, project overview, cost and schedule, and then of course question and answer. So, and first of all, project background. So Goshen Irrigation District, we divert water from Wayland Diversion off the North Platte River, about 4 miles from Guernsey, and we have 3 major siphons on our system that our whole canal runs through. We have some other open canal laterals, about 3 major canal laterals that are about 60 miles long. And our main canal is 86 miles from Wayland Diversion to the state line of Nebraska, where we are responsible for delivering water to Gearing Fort Laramie Irrigation District. So they're a stakeholder in this as well. And of course, we have 2 half-mile long tunnels in our district. Tunnel 2 is the one that had the collapse and failure. And there's also a mile-long tunnel in Nebraska on the Gearing-Fort Laramie Canal. So when the collapse happened, July 17, 2019, of course, in the middle of the night, but we do have SCADA nearby that alarmed us that the canal had a high level, and then not too long after that, an alarm that said that we had a low level in our canal, so we knew that the canal was probably breached. Called personnel up right away. We were on scene within about 45 minutes to an hour. It's about 45 minutes to get up to Wayland and to the Tunnel 2 area. But we had shut water off by 3 a.m. when we realized that there was a collapse and a breach in the canal. So pretty short period of time to get things shut down. But of course, we were running not full capacity, but pretty full canal at that point. So it took a little while for the water to drain out. And of course, notified emergency services of what happened. And of course, found out that we had a large sinkhole above Tunnel 2. So we realized that the tunnel had indeed collapsed. That's just a couple pictures of on top above Tunnel 2 where the sinkhole was created, and that sand, it's kind of like hourglass sand, just ran into the tunnel from the top of the roof and just overtook. The water couldn't handle getting rid of all that sediment, and just basically made a dam in our tunnel, which caused the breach just upstream of Tunnel 2. And this is just a overhead look at the damage that the breach caused. Like I say, we're running about 1325 CFS at the time of the collapse. So a lot of water in one spot actually washed a canal bank out about 100 yards long, and actually washed the bottom of the canal out 10 to 12 foot deep. So had a lot of repair to do on the canal besides the tunnel. And just kind of what we did with the tunnel collapse to get it mitigated and back into use. Engineers looked at the tunnels and found spots of concern. And of course, where the collapse was, once we got the dirt out of the way, we installed 6-inch steel beams to help support the tunnel. And this took roughly 6 weeks to fix the canal collapse before we were able to restore water. And the University of Nebraska and University of Wyoming did a joint economic impact study and came up with a $90 million impact of the crop damages that those 6 weeks without water caused. So then we were able to restore water in August, ran for the rest of the season. And then the next season, we put in more steel supports in both Tunnel 1 and Tunnel 2 in places that engineers deemed concerning, and ran that way for the next year. But by putting those steel supports in, caused a lot of turbulence inside the tunnels, and we were losing a lot of our original water flow. So the next year we put up, as you can see in the picture here, some steel sheeting to help with the hydraulics. Steel sheeting doesn't help any with support, but just for the hydraulics, make smoother transition. And then started working on what our permanent solution for this would be. This was just, we always say, a Band-Aid for this fix. So. And we always say this is kind of we still feel it's an emergency. Those steel sets are taking on load, and we still aren't able to deliver at full capacity. So our urgency is still there to get this project completed. I think with that, I will turn it over to Marcus.
So thank you, Kevin. And Mr. Chair, thank you for having us here today to provide this project update. It's been my great pleasure to serve these districts and through them, the state of Wyoming's interest on this project. Kevin said we are operating with a continued sense of urgency because we know that that state of emergency that affected these districts in that region, that's not gone away. And so we are actively working towards our end goals of rehabbing these tunnels in totality. We have some great updates for you. And for our updates, we're going to start with NEPA and permitting. You know, those are always, not always, but often big challenges for these larger projects. Right away and easements in that same bucket. I'm going to talk about the design advancement, where we sit there, some of the cool concepts we're employing, and finally wrap it up with agency review and a little bit of discussion about the current budget and GMP status. So for those of you that may not be aware, just a quick update on what NEPA is, the National Environmental Policy Act. It's certainly required anytime there's a federal nexus, and we definitely have that here because Bureau of Reclamation owns these tunnels. And so they acted as lead agency for the NEPA, and that was an environmental assessment that was has been through draft phase and has been through public comment. We've addressed public comments, and we've sent back a final, what we believe to be final compliant document to Reclamation. We were hopeful, if you note that bullet on the bottom right, we were hopeful that would be a checkbox here today instead of just a bullet, because we feel like any day now, and this has been through email correspondence with Reclamation, we literally anticipate a FONSI any day, but unfortunately have not seen that just yet. The BLM is also involved. They are a cooperating agency, and we anticipate, hopeful, and obviously do not speak for them, but they've been involved in the process. We anticipate their FONSI would follow closely behind Reclamation's. Regarding project right-of-way, a lot of great progress has been made here as well. All private right-of-way needed for construction has been secured. We've also secured a significant amount of state land for temporary staging and easements. The BLM lands will be, knock on wood, we anticipate would be granted following issuance of their FONSI. Quick overview of the CMAR process that was mentioned during the last presentation. Construction manager at risk really means early contractor involvement, and that is the delivery model that was used here for Goshen. The CMAR for this project is Atkinson Construction. They are a tunneling contractor. Okay, the last bullet's an important one. The guaranteed maximum price proposal. Again, we're very close on. Wish we had that for you here today. We anticipate that'll be presented to the boards at their meeting next week, and that'll be a proposal. So what is our approach to rehabbing this tunnel? So through value engineering work in collaboration with the CMAR, the methodology has changed here some. I believe we presented this in November, but we have more detail now. And for those of you that haven't seen this, and what we are proposing and what the project would entail is use of an open face tunnel boring machine. We call it a digger shield. And that machine is a cylindrical machine. It would ride on the existing tunnel inverts, completely remove the tunnel crown and sides. And so it's a full rehabilitation of the tunnel. And we think that has some real advantages for this type of ground because the excavations, the personnel, a lot of the operations fully enclosed and the ground is supported as you advance. And we saw in those previous pictures, history has shown us there's a tendency, there's the ability for running ground here. Since that time, obviously a lot of grout has been injected into the tunnels, and we're going to inject some more before this operation takes place. But the digger shield really helps us to mitigate those ground risks. It's also a high quality product in the fact that the tunnel that's assembled behind are precast concrete segments. Those segments are joined together and fastened and ultimately grouted into place. And because of that, we're able to procure those segments in advance. We're able to have high quality concrete product that's cast in a controlled environment. Also have grade control, and ultimately hydraulic capacity is satisfied. So the overall approach would be to, what we're scheduled and hoping to accomplish would be to begin with site work, portal redevelopment this fall. To accommodate this digger shield, the portals will have to be ready to launch and receive this large machine. Following that, there'd be replacement of tunnel 2 and then replacement of tunnel number 1. Just a little bit more on the site work here. Just some minor road improvements would be needed to bring in this equipment, just typical construction, preparation, staging areas and such. The portals again would be reconfigured to launch and receive the machines, and we need to bring site power down. Here's a rendering of what that launch would look like. You can see the jacking frame there. The machine pushes off that and begins to consume and replace the new tunnels. Just some more renderings here showing the inlet side. And for value engineering, we want to limit the scope of that to what's necessary and needed to facilitate the rehabilitation of the tunnels. Now the outlet. So the big question obviously is on size. What is the diameter? Just wanted to communicate that here. The existing tunnels are a modified horseshoe shape. They would be replaced with a circular shape, and that would be an 18-foot internal diameter. And so there would be adequate capacity. Again, that would be set on the existing invert, so there's a slight invert rise for the flow line of the tunnel. Sorry. Just a little bit more of the activity is shown here in this schematic of what we'd anticipate within that. The digger shield will advance. The working face there is removing the tunnel. I don't think that's fully to scale. We don't anticipate tandem trucks in there, but we do have a nice advantage in that we can muck material out the front of the tunnel, and that's going to help with production rates. Obviously, a lot of tunneling doesn't have that luxury. You're mining into virgin ground. You got to muck material behind you and bring in your new tunnel. So here we have that benefit that should help with production rates. And again, we have to do this in the off season of irrigation. We recognize fully that impacting water deliveries is not an option. And so that should help with that. The backup decks and some of that erector equipment on the back end, that's the trailing end. The machine jacks off of the segments that were installed and erects new segments behind it. There is either a telescoping or a temporary support system working with manufacturer, the likely manufacturer on that right now. And so as the ground is mined out, those temporary supports can be advanced even further in advance of the tunnel. Obviously, always doing what we can to mitigate those risks. Another measure that would be employed would be this temporary support sled in front of the operation. As Kevin was alluding to earlier, we believe that the steel sets that are in the tunnel now are accepting load. And so as those are removed, those will be replaced with this temporary sled, providing that additional support as the ground is mined out also. And then just another schematic view, more than the schematic, of the digger shield. So these pictures are examples. They are not the digger shield for Goshen, but give you a good life-size view of what these machines look like. The different tooling I would call to your attention on the front end. That working tooling can be that road header type. You can grind through rock and different materials, or you can fit that with the bucket, potentially change those out as you go to match the ground. Again, the precast segment panels, those are, again, precast, and so they're in a quality environment. These are high strength panels. It's not your everyday concrete, so it's going to be a very quality product. This precast segmental tunnels have a long history of use, and here's some example of one here in the photo. So a little bit more on the proposed schedule. GMP proposal will be given to the boards at their next meeting here in May. We would anticipate, well, it's going to be the board's decision from there, potentially execute those in June. What we want to do is put the boards in a position where they can make that decision to either start procuring some materials or not. This summer's got a lot of big decisions ahead of us. We're going to work through the office, make sure we're making smart choices there, but some of this equipment's going to take some time. And really, if we're going to meet the construction schedule for the tunnels, we're looking at a year lead time for some of these segments and the machines. So those decision points are coming soon. We want to have the NEPA right away and the costs understood in order to allow smart decisions to be made. So that schedule, sorry, those don't show up as well as I would have liked, but the inlet work would lead the site development and then again the tunneling. It's a 3-year total duration with those intermediate seasons for irrigation. So because this is a reclamation-owned facility, and in order for the districts to have the opportunity to draw upon a potential loan from reclamation, we had to go through what's called their directives and standards process. We're going to have that buttoned up in time, or we plan to obviously have that buttoned up in time for construction. Ultimately, it's required. So what we've already been through is value planning and engineering. We're resolving what they call their design, estimating, and constructability process, or DEC. And the 90% review process will need to be addressed here shortly as well. Corey?
All right. Thank you again. I'm going to finish today just to give a quick cost update and where we're at on cost estimating and securing funding. As Marcus mentioned, we are working with the CMAR, the contractor for this, and expect to have an updated cost estimate and a full GMP proposal next week at the board. So everything I talk about is a little bit speculative based on the work and interactions we've had with them for the last several months, but we're getting closer, and so nothing is exact. We don't have final answers. We'll know more after next week's board meeting. And we've been working with them now for about a year. We got an initial cost estimate from them in November, and we got the what we're referring to here is the current cost estimate from them in January. The first current proposed estimate from them, the first proposed GMP, so to speak, came in higher than what we had anticipated or expected at about $130 million. So we've been working with them leading up to next week's submission of their next proposal to try to identify, are there any potential cost savings? And so we have, I believe, successfully worked with them through a value engineering process to find some things, removing the risk from potential subcontracting requirements of them not being able to self-perform critical aspects of the work, things like, really focusing on who's going to do the work, working on the construction scheduling. We believe that's going to lead to about a $10 million cost savings. We're going to try to work with local contractors and bid out the portal work and the site work outside of the tunnels. We believe that will lead to potential cost savings up to and on the order of, we hope, about $5 million. And so there's a potential cost savings there. We've been working with them extensively the last several months just to really hone in on that risk register and implement risk mitigation strategies. Through some design evolution, some identifying some hydraulic capacity issues to really meet everything we do has to meet modern Bureau of Rec design standards. There was some design evolution and changes around the design tunnel diameter, which we think is going to add about $5 million to the cost. All of that is purely speculative based on these conversations we've been having with them, which leads us, sitting here today with our best guess of where we think this is going to come in is somewhere between $110 and $130 million will be the total project cost once we get the proposal from Atkinson. Again, that's our sense of what we think we're going to find out next week. We will find out more. Unfortunately, the project is just, this is a risky tunnel to build. It's through hourglass sand. It's complicated construction with very tight scheduling constraints. And so that's, I think with the methods we're using here, this is where the costs seem to be landing. So the timeline, updated proposal May, that's what I talked about. That's next week's proposal, their next documentation submitted from the CMAR from Atkinson Construction. If we can work through that, if it is acceptable to the board, if we can get to a cost we can agree to, potentially we'd be executing that GMP contract in June. And work towards early work authorizations of procuring the digger shield and the precast segments, really trying to work towards, as Marcus just mentioned, doing the site work and portal work on the first tunnel, which is actually tunnel 2, yet this fall. Remember, we are on a very tight construction window. You can't do any work essentially until nominally September 15th when water is turned off. And you absolutely 100% have to be out of your construction site by about this time. What's the date? I think they're turning water on in a couple days. And so you have September 15th to around May 1st. That is your construction window with no exceptions. From day one, the constraint we put on the contractor is not being out of the tunnel, not being able to turn the water on by May 1st is an absolute 100% non-starter. With the economic impact we saw just through the tunnel collapse of $90 million, losing water for a year through a system like this is something on the order of about $250 million plus or minus economic impact on an annual basis. So that construction window is very, very defined by the delivery of water through that irrigation season. So I think what's important just to remember where do we sit today in the funding available, and I think the first and foremost just to remind everybody that while Goshen Irrigation District is about 52,000 acres and Midvale is the largest irrigation district in the state, the total system, half of it, 51% of it resides in Nebraska. And so this canal and these tunnels, the water that flows through these tunnels deliver water to about 107,000 acres. That's why it's such a big system and such a massive economic impact to not have water. That also means that Gering-Fort Laramie, GID's sister district in Nebraska, they have to pay 51% of the bill. With the Wyoming side, Goshen Irrigation District being on the hook for 49%. Currently, and these are kind of estimates, kind of a little bit rounded, but currently as we sit, there's about $41 million through your program through the state of Wyoming. Nebraska has secured almost $24 million through the state of Nebraska through ARPA, which has a time requirement, has to be spent by somewhere, I've heard different dates, July to December of next year, really by October of next year, they have to spend that $23 million. The state of Nebraska has made it clear, go spend that money before you come back and ask for additional money from us. Working with the Bureau of Rec, this is a Bureau of Rec owned facility. They have the aging infrastructure account called the XM loan program that is available to the districts. They have been granted up to $59 million that are available to the districts, but that is a 100% loan. It brings the total of funding available at this time to about $123 million, where if we get a total project cost of between $110, $130 million, we're kind of right in the range of being essentially a fully funded project. But at a $60 million loan, that's detrimental to the irrigators of the system. So it's obviously not desirable to the irrigators here. Right now, I think pre-collapse, and Kevin can correct me if I'm wrong here, but pre-collapse, the assessment for the Goshen Irrigation District was $27 an acre. They increased that to $32 an acre to help fund and pay for the emergency repairs and to contribute to the design of the new tunnels. So they're currently sitting at $32 an acre. To take that loan, that would add about $25 an acre to the assessment for both Nebraska and the Wyoming irrigation districts. Just not that it matters. The Nebraska Gering-Fort Laramie, they currently sit at $41 an acre on their assessment. So to add $25 an acre is a significant increase for this district. So while the money is available to borrow, the district is working diligently with to turn over every rock they can to find other funding sources, especially at the federal level. 2 weeks ago, we held a legislative tour that was very well represented. We had representatives from the state of Wyoming, but Representative Harriet Hagman was in Torrington at the site herself. Representative Adrian Smith, representative from Nebraska, was also in Torrington for this meeting. We had representatives from Senator Ricketts' office from Nebraska. We also had representatives from Senator Loomis and Senator Brasso's office as well. Recently, the districts did apply, one on each side of the state line, one in Wyoming, one in Nebraska, appropriations requests to the federal, at the federal level, totaling $16 million. That doesn't cover the $60 million loan that they're facing, but it is a step that, you know, I can't talk with my hands. I bumped the buttons. It just is an example of how we're continuing to work at the national level, the federal level, to try to find any funding sources that are out there. We have been in talks with NRCS to evaluate opportunities to secure PL 566 funds. And while this project scores very high at the state level through the NRCS office in Casper, that is currently an unfunded program because we're on continuing resolution, and it's everybody's guess if a program like PL 566 will receive additional funding if and when they pass a new budget for the NRCS. Evaluated things in programs like FEMA BRIC in the past. As you know, FEMA BRIC has been recently terminated. So we are dealing in a new landscape of trying to find federal funding. So the funds are available, although the loan program would be very detrimental to everybody involved here. So we'll know more next week and continue to work very diligently with to evaluate every program we can find to help support this project. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Dan Larson here.
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, we can all see that Nebraska has a little bit of shortfall if they're trying to match the 51% or whatever, 49%. So is Nebraska talking about upping that, or what's up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Currently, of course, Nebraska state legislatures are in session, and so they've been meeting with them regularly, and so far the answer has been no. Nebraska is carrying a deficit in their budget right now, so they aren't too willing to give out any more grant money. But they have been talking with the Bureau of Reclamation if maybe we don't need to utilize all of that, all of our 49% of that XM loan, that maybe they could take on more of that loan or increase that loan amount. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Nebraska's stance, I'm told, is if they don't have enough money for both tunnels, then we just do one tunnel and look for further funding and go from there. So unfortunately, it would delay things even longer, but that's where they're at right now, from what I know.
Answer your question, Dan?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Cayley, I believe, question.
Oh, yeah, I just got a question for Marcus. What would be the chances of a couple of commissioners checking out that digger live?
100%.
That's
Appreciate that.
That's good to hear. There was another question.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman?
Todd? Oh, go ahead. Online, Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, just wanted to have a couple questions. The first is, I thought I heard that I know there's impediments to the current level of water going through the tunnels versus what was there before. My question is, are all the customers on the other end of the tunnels getting their full allotment of water, or is there a curtailment in what the folks that are using this water are getting right now?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. So we are restricted right now. By the time it gets to Nebraska, because of losses and everything, they're down to about 85% of what we normally should be delivering. So yes, we have had to put on a higher limit or lower limit, however you want to say it. You know, our water rights say we can get can take up to a foot per 70 acres. Right now, most places we can get 1 CFS to 100 acres. So yeah, we're definitely not delivering everything we could be. Right now, we figured, Marcus and I kind of ran some numbers here a while back, and just from the restrictions of the tunnels, we are not delivering 20,000 acre feet that we could be delivering every year. So with this size of a system, it doesn't take much of a percentage to really add up with the total amount of water. So people have had to, you know, change some of their crop methods. Of course, with center pivot irrigation has helped, but a lot of those center pivots, they've had to re-nozzle and nozzle down to put on less water, so then it takes longer to get over your crops. So yeah, it's been a struggle. But like I say, we're just glad we can deliver what we can deliver. So.
Okay, a follow-up question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yep, thank you. And then on the funding side of this, I guess, well, I just wanted to ask, you know, last I heard we were at 90 million when the last time I had a conversation about this, and now we're at $1.10 to $1.30. And then you're going to meet, I understand it correctly, next week we're going to get some harder numbers on this at their board meeting. And then I also heard about possibly doing one tunnel and then one tunnel, but that would throw the cost way out of line, wouldn't it? I mean, we'd be chasing our tails on that one, wouldn't we? I can't imagine. And I guess the only other thing I wanted to kind of ask was about this tunnel, and I too would like to see that digger. That'd be a pretty cool deal. But I was wondering, did you talk about other types? Were there other types of construction that were contemplated? Whether that means I mean, at the prices we're getting to, I just got to ask the question about just opening the ground up and getting rid of the tunnels altogether. Is that, I mean, at these prices, I know moving that much material is incredible, but I just wanted to ask, what other types of construction did you exercise as far as options? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I'll try to unpack that. There was a lot there to respond to. Maybe begin with the end, and you might have to remind me if I miss anything. So since our team got involved in 2021, we followed the water development process from start to finish, beginning with the feasibility analysis and evaluating options. I was 21 into 2022. And we have continued, and we continue to this day to always be evaluating as we get more information in, i.e. like things like the costs, and as we get new cost estimates in, we continue to look at and make sure that we are always on the same path, on the best path. And if we ever feel that, and even today, if there is a better path available to us, we are open to and evaluate that. Specific to the open cut, that one is easy because that would be the most straightforward path to do this. But this tunnel, both tunnels have segments of the Oregon Trail, California Trail, Mormon Trail over the top of them. It is an absolute non-starter from the Bureau of Rec, will not allow us to do that. So we can't do the open cut. We've looked at everything from, a sequential excavation method was originally our construction method. The geotechnical risk on this is so high. The digger shield, which is kind of really a large bore tunnel boring machine, was developed in the hopes of mitigating the geotechnical risk. It really does mitigate the geotechnical risk. Obviously, this tunnel collapsed once, and it daylighted all the way to the top in very short order. That is something we cannot allow to happen again. So to mitigate that risk is how we've developed this process. And so everything from off-alignment tunnels to boring machines to sequential excavation, we have evaluated it. Right now, I'm confident that this is the best product and mitigates the level of risk to the best of our ability. It is a good method moving forward. unfortunately, the costs are higher than we expected. And we didn't mitigate the costs or lower the costs, or maybe the cost would have been much higher on some of those other methods that we originally had anticipated. So again, we're continuing to look at and work with the district, the board, the contractor to make sure we're on the best path. But as of today, that's the method we're on. There was a construction cost estimate last fall, and it was, and this is where I'm always educating myself as well. You have a construction cost estimate of 90 million. That's the construction cost estimate. A GMP, and the number we'll be getting the proposal from them next week is the construction cost, along with allowances for anything that you may have uncertainty on quantities. That would be in the total construction cost. You also have contingency buckets built into the GMP for contractor contingency and owner's contingency to account for any uncertainty and any risk that's associated with this. So that GMP, in theory, and there is never a guaranteed of anything, but it's the best we can get to a guarantee of maximum price. And so with those contingency buckets and everything else, we're looking at a total project cost, not just a total construction cost, of between 110 and 130 million as our best estimate. I cringe to give that to you because this project, every time we've gotten a number from the contractor, it has been higher. So if their number comes in higher next week, don't yell at me. We're doing the best we can. And candidly, we've been since 2020 in a terrible inflationary environment. And as we understand the risks associated with this tunneling method, those costs have just continued to climb. Marcus, anything you would add to that?
I might just add one thing in relationship to the funding that's available through the legislature. That's roughly $42 million. The intent from the legislature, which is in the statute language, is 2 tunnels. So our stance as the office, we need to carry out the intent of the legislative, the statutes that came out of, I guess that was this year, as well as back in 2022. So what we've talked about is, if they don't have, Wyoming seems like the 49%. Wyoming's sitting in good shape. It's Nebraska that potentially doesn't have the match to complete 2 tunnels. So if the decision is made to move forward with tunnel 2, that's the one that collapsed first, and then come back later when Nebraska can come up with their other side of the funding, our stance as an office is, once we get that guaranteed maximum price and an understanding of what the portals are going to cost for each of the tunnels and the site work and all that stuff, is to basically break that up and say, okay, tunnel 2 costs, tunnel 2 portals and a tunnel, as well as any site work associated with tunnel 2, is this much of the, let's say, 130 million, and tunnel 1 is, let's just say they're 65 and 65 million each. Then we would basically allow them to spend a proportionate share of the state funding associated with that particular tunnel. So in other words, they can't spend the entire $41 million on one tunnel, and then they're coming back when the intent was that's for 2 tunnels. So that's what the office has been talking about.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Senator Grew, any other questions?
No, that I appreciate that. I just, when we were talking about, Nebraska talking about maybe only doing 1 tunnel. Yeah, that was the first thing I thought of. They're our sister state. And Mom always used to say, never lend money to your sister. So I'm just sticking with that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner.
Well,
Cott,
Mr.
I
Chairman.
believe had a question.
Mr. Chairman.
So Commissioner Cott has a question. I'm going to let him ask.
Again, on the funding side. So what date did you project starting this project again? Sometime in this September, is that right?
Yes, sir. We are currently scheduled to be awarding and mobilizing after the irrigation season this year. Of course, we need to get through agency reviews. We need a FONSI. We need some things to happen for us. But, right now that's reflected in the schedule. We believe we have some reasonable durations in there to complete agency reviews, and that is our intention.
And one more question, and the funding would need to be in place before we started construction. Is that correct?
That's a decision that's over my pay grade, sir, Mr. Chair, through you. And so I'm gonna defer that one, but we want to put the districts in a position and work with the office on making some smart choices here once we have some more information.
That's been our stance all along, is we want a fully funded project so we don't end up with getting into it and then we don't have enough funding. So, however, there is this situation where if you just go with one tunnel, and also understanding Nebraska's side of the funding right now is ARPA funds, which has a deadline associated with it. So we're waiting to see how all these numbers play out through the construction manager at risk, CMAR, to then make a good decision for the sponsor to be able to make a good decision on whether to move forward or not. We don't want to delay the project at the same time. So there's a lot of things that we need to think about as we move forward.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a quick question. Senator Grew brought up, if we delay this and working on Tunnel 2, the costs are going to go up. The staging, moving equipment in and out, and just inflation is going to drive this project costs on Tunnel 2 up significantly. And I understand not lending money to your sister, but sometimes, you might need to think about that. I'm wondering, is there a way that the state could lend Nebraska or that irrigation district some money because the cost, are going to go way up, and the state of Wyoming is going to end up, paying more money over time if we don't do this project now.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the comment. Yes, I can talk a little bit more about the timing of the construction. Just to go back into the construction schedule, it's not up, doesn't matter. As Marcus presented earlier, it's about it is a 3-year construction window. And so time is of the essence. We have to get agency review done. We have to get the Bureau of Rec approval. Everything kind of hinges on that. And so if we can get agency approval, we'd be starting the portal work so we could, just the inlet and outlet of the first tunnel, Tunnel 2 this year, and then the slope stabilization and other things. We wouldn't actually do any tunneling work in the fall of 25, spring of 26. So the first off season would be focused on the work outside of one tunnel. And so then it would be the fall of 2026, spring of 2027, before you actually start tunneling into the first tunnel, which is Tunnel 2. It gets confusing to me every day. But so we'd get into Tunnel 2 essentially a year from now. And so right now, between the ARPA funds and the state of Wyoming funds, there are enough funds in there to completely reconstruct one tunnel. And we believe we have enough money through the XM program to reconstruct the second tunnel. But we wouldn't actually be getting into Tunnel 2 until the third off season. So essentially 3 years from now. And so, as long, we don't have to make that decision today about Tunnel 1 or 2. Really, that decision doesn't come into play until essentially 2 years from now. And so what the message from the Nebraska side in particular was, they allocated these ARPA funds, the nearly 24 million 3 years ago. And so they have been using some of those funds, but a minimal amount just to pay for their portion of the design fee, right? And so the message hasn't necessarily been no. It has been no at different times, and there's been no clear answers. But they have made it very clear until we can get a proof of concept on at least one tunnel. Until you spend the first 24 million, they're not going to allocate any more funds. And so especially from the Nebraska side, looking at building one tunnel does not necessarily mean we would be delaying Tunnel 2. And the intent and hope is to sign a contract with some benchmarks in there that you could terminate the contract after one tunnel, but the intent would be to contract and secure a guaranteed maximum price for both tunnels. And you wouldn't actually have to you would terminate the contract after Tunnel 1 if at that time it's just, we will know a lot more 2 years from now. So we have 2 years before we make that decision.
Commissioner Anselmi.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Probably this for you, Corey, I guess. The tunnels now are at 85%. Maybe it's for Kevin more. But is the new tunnel that we're going to build with this boring machine, is it going to be more efficient? Can we make up ground is it bigger, better, faster? Can it make up the ground with just Tunnel 1 and still then just use, well, really it's Tunnel 2, right? And then Tunnel 1, sorry. But can we make it up so that the irrigators kind of stay whole if we just did the one tunnel?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we the new tunnels will be more efficient, able to handle more water for flood control and for our deliveries. I guess the problem is we are planning to do Tunnel 2 first, the first tunnel to be worked on. Unfortunately, Tunnel 1 is restricted as well, so it won't necessarily help us get water until both tunnels are completed, unfortunately. It's kind of it would make more sense water-wise to do Tunnel 1 first, but as far as risk, we feel it's best to do Tunnel 2 first. So, but unfortunately, Tunnel 1 is restricting as much water as Tunnel 2 would also. Actually, Tunnel 2 does not restrict as much water as Tunnel 1 is what I should say. It could hold a little more water, but so Tunnel 1's always kind of been the choke point of the system. It's kind of what determines the capacity of our canal. So up to this point, hopefully that answered your question.
Mr. Chairman, maybe if I could weigh in as well. Remember, when the Tunnel 2 collapsed, the Bureau of Rec went and did an inspection of both tunnels, had to investigate a solution. And so I think there was a photo early on of the I-beam ribs that were installed. They did an inspection on Tunnel 1 as well, and they found some concerning issues in Tunnel 1 that were almost more concerning than what we were finding in Tunnel 2. So both tunnels are considered a risk for failure. And at that time, so the ribs that were put to stabilize Tunnel 2, the section that collapsed, that's not the only section. There's multiple sections where these ribs were installed in both tunnels. So while pre-collapse, Tunnel 1 could carry the full water, right, or very close to it, they did put ribs in both tunnels. So now Tunnel 1 is the one that's really constricted. And it's because those ribs were installed in Tunnel 1. Does that help?
Other questions? I have a couple of questions. One I'd like to follow up with Senator Grew, and I'm certain just because of timing and other things, it's not a possibility, but I'd like to ask anyway. Regarding the discussion about excavation in the past, who owns the land above on the surface of the tunnels go under?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. There's multiple owners for each parcel. So the Bureau of Reclamation has a federal right-of-way granted by the 1890s Canals Act, but the true titled ownership is both private, BLM, and state lands.
So there would be multiple landowners to deal with if there was,
Yeah.
if excavation became the option. I won't go on with that thought then. But then one thing I did want to just comment on, I've mentioned this before. There are many in the room that probably haven't heard it, but the Western Sugar Grower Cooperative includes sugar factories in the Bighorn Basin in Lovell, in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. There was one in Torrington that we've mothballed, but we use for storage, and in Colorado, I forget, Fort Morgan, Colorado. That grower cooperative depends on all the growers of the area to produce the crop and the sale of the commodity. And everyone that, if a grower area has a catastrophic loss, everyone in that cooperative fails. So this project not only includes those growers, or could affect growers in Nebraska that are growers for our cooperative, also in this Wyoming side of the tunnels. It would affect us in the Bighorn Basin. It would affect growers in Colorado. I know that Colorado's not going to put any money into this project, but it certainly would affect them if we weren't able to deliver water to the growers in Nebraska that are sugar growers. So I think that's something for our Wyoming contingent to consider and select water to kind of keep in mind when we talk about funding for this project. The other comment I'd like to make is the cost of their water. They're at $42 an acre, did I hear? For the Nebraska?
Yeah, I believe Nebraska now is at $42 an acre. And we're actually, because since the tunnel collapse, like Corey said, we did raise an extra $5, and we've actually raised another $1.00. So we're at $33 and then a $250 account fee. And we're just going into our new budget right now, so we'll see what we have to do this year. But
so they're just for information more than anything. The $42 is already about $10 an acre higher than the Wyoming side.
Correct.
And, the 30 to 35 range is very comparable to other to our project in the Bighorn Basin under the Shoshone project, similar type of project. I don't know about the Fremont County rates that
Right in there.
Commissioner Pence is involved in. So really, in my mind, that extra $25 that you're talking about would be a big burden for them. So just, that's all I have to say. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, I'd like the legislators that are in attendance from the select water to be able to ask questions a little easier. Can we do a quick shuffle of microphones so we can spread them out a little bit further? I don't know if we need to take a quick break to do that or not, but
Can we take a quick break?
Yes, yeah, let's take 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's get started. There's quite a bit to cover yet this afternoon. So I'd like to mention to those online, it's hard for us to see if we don't necessarily see your little hand wave on the screen. So I think if you have questions, you'll have to just speak up and we'll try to acknowledge you. And I also want to apologize to the Select Water group in particular. I don't know very many of you and I'm not real good with names and I'm not necessarily apologizing for that. That's just a fact. So if I don't call you by name, please don't take that personal. Director?
Mr. Chair, George Mosher with the Water Development Office.
Welcome, George.
Thank you, sir. For Commission's consideration today, we have a discussion related to water sales and really a topic related to whether sponsors should be sharing in revenues associated with water sales on new development projects. So for a little bit of background on that, commissioners will remember that at the last meeting, the March meeting, there were a whole lot of construction project agreements. Those level 3 construction project agreements outline conditions by which a sponsor can either, sell their project or sell water out of their project, and then define what kind of proceeds from that sale might need to come back to the commission. Generally speaking, those mirror the language from the omnibus construction bill or the construction bill that kind of authorizes that project. Occasionally, sponsors contact the office and ask about the applicability of whether they, would owe the commission any money associated with water sales for outside users. And a lot of times that's a pretty simple analysis. We would look at whether we've built something kind of upstream from where that sale is going to occur, or whether it's, relying on something that's downstream. However, for today's discussion, we have something that has a little bit more nuance associated with it, and we just thought that we would have the discussion with the commission and look to you all to see whether the office is thinking about this in the right way, or whether we maybe need to take a different approach. So in front of everybody today, and then probably also we can serve online, I have a series of 3 diagrams or schematics. We'll just start with the first, figure 1-1. And generally speaking, this is just a big schematic diagram of the Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities system. And I also think that, if you want to take this home or maybe study up on it, the Board of Public Utilities system is pretty complex. And this is a pretty good diagram to just kind of capture that, starting on the left side of the page. Generally speaking, the western side of all of the Cheyenne system, you see the little snake diversions. It talks about kind of and depicts how those water transfers occur across the basin, how that's accounted in Rob Roy, transfers across the Laramie Basin, and then shows up in granite and crystal reservoirs. For our discussion today, the series of depictions that I have on the following pages will kind of be focusing in that crystal reservoir area. In particular, we'll be looking at the area between Crystal Reservoir and what's called the Sherrard Plant on figure 1-1. So obviously there are more details that are downstream of Sherrard, but when we get to the ultimate project proposal, it's something it's really going to be right downstream of Crystal. So the details of that, the infrastructure that's downstream from there are probably not particularly relevant. The next figure that you'll see in the packet is so-called figure 3-1. Figure 3-1 actually comes from the Board of Public Utilities Water Master Plan. It's just, once again, kind of stair-stepping in a little bit closer and a little bit closer, and you start to see this arrangement of pipe that comes out of Crystal Lake Reservoir here. So you start to see this depiction of a 50-inch steel a 30-inch steel, a 36-inch steel. And those are things that's the area that we will be even honing in a little bit closer on. Then the third page of this is titled Potential U.S. Gold Pump Station. This two-panel figure was prepared by Port Public Utilities, and ultimately, after I finish exhausting all the wind I have available, the BOPU folks are available in the audience and can come up and answer any questions you might have more specifically. But the two panels really start getting in on what we're talking about. Panel on the left shows Crystal Reservoir and also contains a depiction of, quote, approximate mine location. So in the case of this project, the Board of Public Utilities has been approached by a user and they are looking to purchase water. And that purchase would require some pipeline connection, pump station interconnect, and it kind of ties with a little bit of infrastructure that the Water Development Commission has funded over time. And so we'll talk a little bit more then about the right side panel. On the right side, what you'll see is a 30-inch raw water line, 20-inch raw water line, and 36-inch raw water line. For our purposes, really what we will be talking about is the 30-inch and the 36-inch. The 20-inch raw water line doesn't really meaningfully connect to the base of Crystal Reservoir. So what I'm hoping to do is fixate your interest on that 30-inch and the 36-inch and see how the proposed pump station connects to a 30-inch line and kind of provides water back through and to the South Crow pipeline. The real piece of this that's nuanced is that obviously Board of Public Utilities has participated in a lot of water projects with the state and with the commission over time. So in our instance here, the commission participated in a project to build what's depicted here is the 36-inch raw water line. And you'll note that the way this is shown is that the proposed pump station would not connect to that 36-inch line, but the 36-inch line also created some capacity within Cheyenne's system. Both of these lines, both the 30-inch and the 36, have the ability effectively to transmit water from the outlet of Crystal and into the Sherrard water treatment plant. So in thinking about this, the office asked the Board of Public Utilities basically what would their capacities be? What could they transmit through these pipelines? With the idea being, if they had to rely on infrastructure that was not built by the commission, what is the capacity that they could transmit? And they did a little bit of looking back over a little more than 20 years. And what they found was that the capacity of the 30-inch line would yield them about 21 million gallons per day, 21 MGD. And over the past 6 years, they really haven't approached even a 20 million gallon per day threshold, and that's looking at their peak day. The proposal in place for their purchase is a facility that's going to be on the order of 1 million gallon per day. So the thinking is it's justifiable to say as long as they don't bust through a 21 MGD occurrence on any day, then they wouldn't, technically speaking, have to rely on the infrastructure that the commission has funded. However, operationally, because they have more than one pipeline in that area, they would sure like to maintain that operational flexibility. So in analyzing all of that thought, the office, I guess the office's opinion was that until Board of Public Utilities sort of busts that 21 MGD threshold, then they would not need to come back to the commission and share from the proceeds of those water sales. However, at the point at which, or if they do, exceed that 21 million gallons per day, then they would be responsible for coming back to the commission. And in the case of the project agreement that created the 36-inch line, the grant portion from the commission was 60% of the project costs. And if you look at the contract language in the agreement between the commission and the Board of Public Utilities, then that would seem to leave the Board of Public Utilities paying the commission 60% of the proceeds associated with those water sales. That is about as fast as I can get through that nuanced discussion. So the things that I guess the office is looking for a discussion on are, one, are we thinking about this all wrong, and should we think about it in a different way? And then two, an approach to, if that is feasible and if that's realistic, how would we go about, figuring out when Board of Public Utilities has exceeded that 21 million gallons per day? Our thought operationally at this point is that we would probably prepare some correspondence to Board of Public Utilities and ask them on an annual basis to report back to the commission and let us know their peak day, by which then we could make a determination as to whether they needed to share in water sales proceeds or not. So with that, I can certainly answer any questions that the commission might have or entertain a discussion if you'd like further information about the background on the agreement. Also, Frank Strong and Brad Brooks from the Board of Public Utilities are here if you have questions more related to Board of Public Utilities operation.
Are there questions for George? Thoughts? Commissioner? And so we don't.
Thanks for the presentation, George. So what would be the amount, say they hit over that amount, do we tell them how much to contract with for the sale of water, or is it a predetermined amount? And maybe that's a question for the city or Frank. But is that something they get to decide, or is it always a set fee? How does that work?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. Insofar as the agreement goes, all it says is that that the commission is to be paid 60%.
Well, just of whatever they charge.
Yeah. Sorry, I about said Madam Chair. Mr. Chair, it would be the agreement for water sales, and the pricing is that would be between Board of Public Utilities and their customer.
Other questions? Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. I didn't really realize that this was happening. Can you give me a couple examples of some place in the state where we did a project for somebody and now they share with their revenue with us?
Mr. Chair, yeah, there certainly are those. In fact, Board of Public Utilities has had kind of a similar arrangement with us before. Several years ago, when they were selling water for oil and gas water supply, we developed basically an arrangement where we specified what the rate would be for payment back to the commission. Off the top of my mind, I think Kemmerer Diamondville Joint Powers Board has an outside water user agreement where they repay the commission associated with the project cost split. Bill, are you familiar with more? Oh, yeah, Wright also does that in association with their water sales for drilling and completion activities outside of town.
And Mr. Chairman, I always also mention Lance Creek as another example where they did something a little different. When we showed them the language in their agreement, they chose to basically purchase back the grant dollars, so then they wouldn't have to repay us. So there's a couple different options that a sponsor could move forward with.
That being said, George, how much money does that bring in every year?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I don't think that we considered a major project proceed to our account, though.
Can you find that out for me and let me know?
Mr. Chair, we certainly can.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pence?
George, when we did this project for them and we funded them, was it for future growth? And would this be considered future growth?
Mr. Chair, yeah, this was particularly funded as a Water Account 1 new development project with the thought that obviously they were going to be growing and expanding and developing further into water rights.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Online, Senator?
Mr. Chair,
Oh, yes.
a follow-up question on that. Well, wouldn't that be just what this line's for if they're using it? They're obviously going to be an outside sales agreement with the gold people up there, but if that gold area is going to be turned into a reservoir someday, which that's the rumor on the street, then wouldn't that be for down the road future, resources for Cheyenne's water?
Mr. Chair, as to the arrangement for whether that is a future resource for BOPU, the gentleman right next to me can probably answer that question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Frank Strong with the Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities. We have been in discussions with the gold mine on that. There's a couple concerns that need to be addressed. Most notably, will the exposed bedrock create unfavorable water quality? The stability of the excavation, because obviously they want to excavate down as straight as they can. Is it going to create a suitable reservoir? And then finally, the depth. They're talking they have to go down 1,000 feet. A 1,000-foot deep reservoir probably doesn't have a lot of value to the BOPU. So there's a lot of things that have to be resolved before we could say, yes, that's going to be a future resource for the Board of Public Utilities.
And that being said, maybe George could answer, but that being said, if it becomes a future resource, then we've kind of flip-flopped both directions, haven't we? We turned around and had you guys pay for part of the user agreement for some of that water, and now we're going back to being a resource again. I don't understand how we would correct that or make adjustments for that in the future.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, maybe the commissioner could elaborate a little bit more. I don't understand the flip-flop.
Yeah, the whole idea on this is that this pipeline was paid for future resources for the city of Cheyenne, correct?
Yeah, to be clear, the 36-inch pipeline was paid for by Water Development. Well, a portion was paid for by Water Development Commission.
And then part of that money now tapping off of that is going to use some of that water that's going to go to this outside user for stuff at the gold mine, correct?
To be clear, Mr. Chair, the proposal in front of you is to in fact tap the other pipeline. It's not to tap into the pipeline that was built by the Water Development Commission.
Well, then why would we expect payback on a pipeline that we didn't pay for?
Mr. Chair, it sounds like the commissioner has, in a slightly different way, agreed with my logic, and I'm happy to see the support.
Okay. Agreed.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Pence?
But you had the 30-inch line already there. We funded a 36. And now they're taking out of the 30, so the 36 is making up for the difference. So basically, we are funding that.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Commissioner Pence. That's the nuance that caused us to ask the question about what the capacities are and whether we had got to a place where Board of Public Utilities would be relying on the capacity that was developed by the commission. And so thank you for kind of pointing that out. That's the component of concern here and why we went down the, what is the capacity of the pipeline that Water Development didn't pay for? And at what point has Board of Public Utilities reasonably expanded into that capacity that the commission did provide for?
Other comments or questions?
Mr. Chair. My question isn't for our presenters, but I want to hear what Select Water has to say about this. It's a revenue source. We're struggling with revenue sources for the Wyoming Water Commission. So there's my question. What does Select Water think?
Mr. Chairman, Dan Larson here.
Senator Larson.
I guess one of my question would be, are they using the 36-inch pipeline? And if they are using the 36-inch pipeline, I think it would be that we should be getting some money out of it. I would guess they are using it, just maybe half full on both of them or something. But I think we should get the money.
Mr. Chair, through you, currently we are using both pipelines, so we maintain their operational ability. Anytime you just shut something off and hope to turn it back on in 10 years, it doesn't always seem to work. So we maintain a full operation of both pipelines so that they are functional.
I think maybe maybe it's not possible, but if we had a clarification, there's been a comment about funding a source of revenue to Select Water, and Senator Larson commented about collecting this, that he believes that there should be some charge for the water. But I guess it might be interesting to know if there's an estimate of what that amount might be, and if it's of enough dollar value to make that much difference to our budget.
Mr. Chair, through you, we'll show our hand. Right now, if they use the water they're predicting, which is 1 million, about 900,000 gallons a day, they want a constant draw of 600 gallons per minute. That's about $1.7 million revenue to the Board of Public Utilities. At 60%, that would essentially be $1 million a year, assuming, yes, they take that amount of water.
Other questions?
Right here.
Commissioner Cott?
I guess, what is the Board of Public Utilities, what's your overall position on this as far as splitting the revenues, and what's your, I mean, do you think that's fair, or what? Tell me your thoughts.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Brad Brooks, Director for Board of Public Utilities. This is why we actually brought it before the Water Development Commission. So let me give a real quick history, and I don't want to get too deep, but a lot of you have probably heard how this project originally originated. So the agreement that we have with the gold mine right now, when we set this up, of course, we are under the possibility of some restrictions that could occur with future curtailment on the Colorado River because of our trade water. In doing that, because they didn't like that liability, we came up an agreement with them to drill 3 new wells over on our Belvoir well field down into the deep Casper aquifer. So the current agreement that we have with them right now for their water sources, they were going to drill 3 new wells that exceeded the capacity of what they would need for the mine site. They were going to build those, pipe it underneath Interstate 80 over to our South Crow line, which that's that line that it shows over here that's going to feed this site. From our South Crow line, that pipeline ties into the 30-inch line. So we were going to feed it from a source that really is not subject to anything water development has developed or anything that is really subject to curtailment, because this is a new water source. That seemed to be the best bet for everybody. It was going to be a financial gain for the city of Cheyenne. We weren't going to have to come and get future loans. We were going to have a private person develop 3 wells for us, build a pipeline, build redundancy into our system. So we thought that is the best deal. What's happened since they got all their permitting done, they've come back to us now, and they've unfortunately are having trouble getting easements for some of those pipelines. So now they came back to the board and said, what are the other options we got to get water? Well, for us, there's only a couple, and the ones they're right here coming out of the pipelines that come down Crystal Canyon. So when we started having those discussions, we said, well, we need to go to the Water Development Commission because, you know, if we tie into the 30 or the 36, there's going to be some differences on because the way the Development Commission, you know, funded that infrastructure. And so with that, we took it before Jason and his staff, and they considered it. And I think then they felt like it was probably something that final decision needed to become before you commissioners and Select Water to decide. Bottom line, we've pretty much told the gold company, hey, if that's what it comes back and there's going to be an additional charge, if that's the water you want to use, we're going to need you to pay it. I can tell you, it's a no-brainer. If you got to pay 67% of every dollar of water you sell, it's probably not too practical from our point. We're going to make some money, but it's not going to be far as beneficial to us as it was if we can make the whole dollar. So we're going to have to go back. If that's what the commission decides, we are supportive of that. We understand that. I think what George and Jason have tried to come up with is that because we're coming off of that 30, they've determined what that capacity is that line will hold. If we need that additionally for our use throughout the year, where we can show that, I think we're in full agreement. If we exceed that and we're depending on that 36 inch, I think we can show that by the metering that we have. And I think we're willing to have to sit down with the gold company and say, okay, there's going to be an additional fee if you exceed this amount.
Brad, that was very excellent explanation. And, you know, as far as our funding goes, I'm 100% in favor of if we can make some money on this, let's do it. I guess I'd like to see is there a written policy on when we kick in and we demand, some money for the use of our infrastructure or infrastructure that we have? I mean, is there a written policy somewhere?
Mr. Chair, as I kind of alluded to at the beginning of the presentation, it's really dictated by the project agreements that the commission has in place. And those project agreements tend to be very specific to the project as opposed to being specific to the entire system. So, Board of Public Utilities obviously has participated in a lot of Water Development Commission projects. Many of them a significant distance downstream from where we're talking here. So, the thought from the office is, we built capacity, but it's not capacity that in any way serves this potential project. So it's probably not really applicable. This little case here, though, of the nuance between the two pipelines gave us some pause and why we find ourselves here today. I think the problem with that really is that it's on a project by project specific basis. We're probably looking at on the order of 30 different project agreements with Board of Public Utilities. So teasing that all apart can be a little bit of a chore.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could also add, I think the intent of when we do projects for municipalities is to serve within their service area and provide water within their service area. And I agree we would be making money, but I would maybe can restate that as that we are recouping some of our previous investment. And the fact that this gold mine is, 20 miles west of town, probably wasn't contemplated when we were upsizing these lines and providing this additional capacity. It was more for the city and surrounding areas that they serve, not an industrial development 20 miles from here. So that's kind of why we've come to the conclusion. And again, just to be clear, we wouldn't start in charging them. It's only when they meet that capacity where they would have to use our pipeline that we participated in. That's when that would kick in, that 60% of the proceeds.
Thank you, Director.
Mr. Chair, if I could add too, just so everybody knows the timeline for this gold mine too, their anticipated length or duration of mining is about 12 to 15 years. It just depends on how it goes, but it's not something that it's going to be a forever consumption, on this line. It's for a 12 to 15 year period is what they're figuring.
Okay, thank you. Senator or Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the question is, you said that there was one place where they actually paid off their loan since it's, or the 60% grant, you know, that they owe still. So is that a choice for, so say it's 15 years, it's going to be $15 million. Is that a choice for them to say, hey, we'll want to pay back this 36-inch loan, grant loan amount to us, and how much it was that for? Do you know, George?
Yeah, so there's a couple of pieces of this. So operationally in the agreement, what happens is if the commission was to determine that Board of Public Utilities needed to share in water sales proceeds, they basically, the commission would get all of the money of the water sales until any loan was paid off. At the point at which the loan is paid off, then the Water Development Commission gets a proportionate share, which is prorated according to how the commission granted money under the project. In this case, 60% was the grant amount. So 60% would be what the commission would get paid back to them. There is also there is a provision in many of these that allow for the sponsor to just outright purchase the commission's interest in that. And I'm going to have to flip through really quick and see if that is operational here. Yeah, in fact, it is. There's a third portion of this that says the sponsor may purchase the position of the state of Wyoming, basically for the original amount of the grant plus interest as determined by the state auditor. So there is an option for Board of Public Utilities to purchase the commission's portion of this interest outright.
How would, sorry, follow up. Thank you. George, how much was that grant loan?
The original project agreement, I think the grant portion was $6.6 million. We would have to probably research that and see what the final closeout amount is. I'm only looking at the agreement here.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Other questions?
Or a comment, and it was brought up about the reservoir. I guess in the future, with the plan there to turn that reservoir over to the city, and then, you know, sometimes, you know, taking over something that would have been maybe a reclamation cost for that company, it may be a way for them to get out of their reclamation cost by just giving it to the city. And then what is the city taking on that the company didn't want, and they're so willing to give this reservoir away? I mean, that's just a comment. If you could respond to that.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. That has been the discussion. The way the reclamation is required for this, they'd have to fill the hole all the way back in. That's a lot of earth moving. So if they could avoid that, that would save them some money.
Mr. Chair, I'd add too, I mean, we are not opposed to the possibility. It's a great concept and idea. If we can get some additional storage out there, it's close proximity to Crystal Reservoir. The issues is like Frank explained earlier, they're going to dig 1,000-foot hole. Well, 1,000-foot hole is not something we're going to want to have as a reservoir. There's going to be a lot of issues with just getting the water out of that. There's going to be a huge dead pool. So we would probably have them fill it up to maybe at max a couple 100 feet. And then we've got to get that pipe out of there down. There's a huge trench that's going to have to be dug into the mountain to get that pipeline tied into our pipelines. So there's just a lot of logistical things that up front, we appreciate them bringing it to us. We think it's a great concept and idea. And if it all works, I think it could be a benefit for Cheyenne, but that's down the road. And we've kind of told them, let's leave that on the table. And when we get to that point, we'll see if it's still practical. And then the other thing is the water quality. They have done some water quality analysis, and they determined that they think there's not going to be any reactivity with those aggregates out there. But until we actually perform that and do it, we don't know. And the last thing we want to do is create a storage reservoir that's got water quality issues that then we got to do further treatment. So it sounds good. And if everything lines up and works, it could be a great thing for the city, but it may not all work. We're just being very cautious on that and committing right out of the gate, say, yeah, this will be a great reservoir. We'll take it over. So, yeah.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair. So Jason, I'm just asking, do we have to make a motion on this and basically vote on it tomorrow? Is that how it goes?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I coming into this, or I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Lisa Anselmi Dalton was our previous chair for those folks just showing up to the Select Water Committee right before.
Just don't call me
Lee
late for
took over.
supper.
My original intent was if we had unanimous decision to, yes, we're thinking correctly, then, this discussion I figured would be enough and we'll just go down that path. If we have a lot of disagreement, then I think it'd be prudent to bring it tomorrow to a vote.
Thank you, Director. I visited with the director this morning a little bit about that, and their, I guess, recommendation was to not expect payment to the commission at this time. So I think as a commission, we're going to have to make a decision, and that the motion and vote would be tomorrow if it comes to that. If there's a disagreement, then we would act accordingly. If there's a consensus, you're not really asking for a motion and vote. Is that what I heard?
Correct. And if you feel it's appropriate to, regardless if you have consensus or not, to have a motion tomorrow, I mean, that's even better. But
Hello, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner.
I mean, my view would be to go, what I hear the staff recommendation from George is that if they exceed the 21 million, then we say, okay, now you've kicked into where we want our money repaid to the commission. And that's how I would say, yes, until then, go free and good luck. But then after that, you need to come back to us and say, pay us back. That's kind of where I'm landing. And if everybody's landing differently, then feel free to, I mean, I would ask for us to vote on it tomorrow personally.
For the sake of time and moving on, do I have anyone who disagrees with Commissioner Anselmi Dalton on that?
I don't disagree, and I do believe that for the record and just to immortalize it, a vote tomorrow is necessary. I agree with what Commissioner Anselmi Dalton said.
Director, would it make sense for the office to prepare a motion for us for tomorrow? George?
Mr. Chair, we certainly can do so.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? I think we should.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, John.
So we do have some disagreement on this, the Select Water. Dan, you want to weigh in on this after you've heard more about what's going on here? Senator Larson had mentioned that he believes Cheyenne should be paying for this, huh?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is correct. I think they should be. I think if it's in the contract, I think we should follow the contract. That's my thoughts.
I think possibly the motion will cover that. And maybe I'm totally misunderstanding this, but I believe the thought is because of the size of the lines that the line, they won't exceed the capacity of their existing line that was not, that the commission was not a participant in unless they exceed the 21 million gallons. Once they exceed that, we would expect revenue. Is that what I'm understanding?
Mr. Chair, that's accurate. And just to kind of circle back around to the point for Senator Larson, I'll remind that the current plan is to connect this piping to a project that was not funded by Water Development Commission.
And I believe, again, a little further clarification that Board of Public Utilities was actually acting in good faith and most likely would not have had to even come to us up to the 21 million. Is that correct?
I'll address that. That we just have a good working relationship with the staff here. So you're exactly right. when we knew that, hey, this could open up some different things as far as requirements in our past contracts, it's just the right thing to do. So that's why we came to Jason and staff and mentioned it to him. So yeah, I think we could maybe have gone that way, but I think making decisions like that sometime can be risky. I'd hate to make a decision like that and then come back and find out that, hey, we made a wrong conclusion. And then, you know, we've signed an agreement with a private party for water, and now that water costs, you know, more than what. So I think it was the right thing to do. Yeah.
Thank you. So, and I certainly don't disagree with Senator Larson, but I do think the city of Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities has probably addressed it up to the 21 million number, and anything over that, we would collect revenue. So Senator Larson, I don't know if that satisfies what you're requesting or not. You have any comments?
Mr. Chairman, that's a really tough one, but I don't know if, I mean, if they're using the pipeline, even if it's only half full, we did help pay for the pipeline. I hate to bring in other issues, but we have been fighting certain legislators in Cheyenne, mainly on how we pay for Board of Control, and I think all of these issues have merit.
Senator Larson, I think there's a little misunderstanding, and I'd maybe ask George to again state that about which pipeline the water's coming from.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it might be helpful to look back at that third figure that was provided, the so-called potential U.S. Gold pump station. The right panel on that figure shows a number of pipelines and a proposed pump station that would accommodate this project. That proposed pump station shows piping that would connect to what's labeled as a 30-inch raw water line, and then pumping that into a South Crow pipeline. And to be clear, the Water Development Commission did not participate in building that 30-inch raw water line. In fact, what the project that we've talked about is the pipe that's labeled 36-inch raw water. So, you know, from strictly speaking an infrastructure standpoint, the connection is not going to be to a pipeline that the Water Development Commission participated in project funding on.
Thank you, George. Senator Larson, does that provide clarification?
I guess turn the 36-inch off then.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Gary Crum for the folks on the video. My question is, why is it going out of the 30-inch versus the 36? It seems to me the 36-inch would be closer and cost less maybe for the infrastructure to go there. Why is it going that way?
Mr. Chair, through you, it was to create this discussion. So, I mean, there were lots of options. We've been talking with US Gold about different opportunities, and we said, you know, yes, we could tie to the 36-inch, or we could tie to the 30, depending how we want to do it. But we need to have this discussion with water development. So I merely drew it that way just to create the discussion if nothing is set in stone.
And I would add, we definitely tied it to the 30-inch because of that issue. But then we brought it to water development to say, okay, we're planning on going to the 30 because there was no participation in that. But how do you guys see this operationally working out? So to be very upfront, yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Is there, is both the 30 and the 36 line being used? So would would the 30 carry all of the load?
Mr. Chair, through you, if we were to lose the 36-inch right now, we can meet all demand with the 30. But obviously we like having that redundancy. So if something happens to either pipeline, we still can deliver water to the plant. So we currently do utilize both facilities at reduced capacity to maintain operations.
Yeah, we basically operate everything fully hydraulically charged. So like Frank said, if one goes down, it's automatically going to feed the other.
So follow up, Mr. Chairman. So, you could put all of the water into the 30-inch line and still have capacity for this million in addition. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, currently at current demands, yes. If you would ask us this 25 years ago, when our demands were actually higher, the answer would probably be no. But we're actually seeing a trend where in early 2000s, we were selling about 15,000 acre feet a year. Last year, we just only sold 12,500. We're seeing actually a reduction in demand from our customers.
And Mr. Chairman, that's where the 21 million gallons per day comes from, to where when they exceed that, which would be in excess of shoving everything through the 30-inch, then that's when we'd get proceeds from the water sales, because that would require them to use both pipes at that point.
I've got a question. Representative Chestick, for those online. And again, I apologize. I'm new to the committee. I'm new to this whole concept. So if I ask a dumb question, please forgive me. But do both pipelines come out of the Crystal Reservoir? And if so, then what difference does it make which pipeline you're tapping into? You're still taking it from the Crystal. So are we selling water, or we're selling access to water through a pipeline? If we're selling the water, then it doesn't matter to me which pipeline it comes out of, does it?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you. Yes, both pipelines connect directly to Sherrard. So hydraulically, they both feed Sherrard. We take that full hydraulic head from Crystal Reservoir and transfer it all the way down to Sherrard. And actually now we use it to operate a hydro generator. So yes, both pipelines are continually being drawn upon. I believe I understand your question in regards to, we are selling water that is in Crystal Reservoir that's coming from stage 1, stage 2. But the water is being delivered, through those pipelines where the 36 inches is part of the access.
I think another way to look at it is just think if the 36-inch line would be a lot easier if it wasn't there, right? We built that for future capacity. We use both lines because, like I said, we leave them hydraulically charged so that we can feed town if something happened. It's not really, the issue here isn't probably the water, it's the infrastructure and the way that the contracts are written, the infrastructure that we're using to feed this facility. So because we're tying it into the 30, which the water development did not participate in, I think we're in agreement with what's being said. They're limiting that up to the capacity of that line. If we were to exceed that, then that means we've got to be using some of the 36-inch. So it's complex. You're not asking a dumb question. It's the right question, but it is complex. They do both tie into the dam. They both are fully hydraulically charged unless we shut one of them down. And all that means, we could probably determine how much water is flowing through the 30 versus the 36 because we got meters. So I can't sit right here right now and tell you, but I know we know exactly on a daily basis what's going down each line in the line.
Yeah, yeah. More likely we're talking like a 60-40. Like a 60-40 split. That's rough off the size of the pipelines. 60% of the water is going down the 36-inch because it's a bigger pipeline. It has less friction loss compared to the 30. But we can get those numbers if that's critical to you guys.
Mr. Chairman, as we've discovered in this conversation, this is a complex question, which is why we brought it. And we're trying to be fair as an office based on how we interpret the agreement and the convoluted, I guess, funding of different portions and parts of the city of Cheyenne's water system over the years. So we're just trying to be fair here.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Craig. I see. Yeah, this is a tough one, and we're not going to be able to parse it out today. But here's what I would say: since we were asked, water development was asked. I understand. It is complicated. just like the Cheyenne Water District, we wouldn't want to do anything that would adversely affect anyone, and neither would the Water District. We're partners, and we're going to work together. All I think that Senator Larson was saying, and I agree with him 100%, is that if our facilities are being used, if our good offices are being used, then we should at least get some credit in some way for that. If it's not a cash payment or if it's a credit on future asks, that's the key point for me. Is this isn't a one-off deal. We're going to be working together for the next on infinitum. And so this deal will be predicated on the next deal. So if we treat each other fairly now, and we take into consideration what everyone's brought to the table, and then we continue to do that all the way through, we're all going to come out ahead. And so I wouldn't look at it as that water development's trying to get something over on the Cheyenne Water right now and get money, because sooner or later they're going to be coming back, or we're going to be coming back and need something from them. So we're always working together. So I guess that's where I'd say is that work with the staff on this one, see what we can come up with, whether it's credits or something together. And we're not looking to Shanghai anybody, but we're not looking to get Shanghaied either. So, and I think the commission would agree with that. I hope they would. I know they would. Frankly, is that everybody wants to make sure that nobody's wasting anything and nobody's giving anything away. So that's my 2 cents on it. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. I'm trying to formulate in my mind how we might want to proceed, and I'm wondering, there's some.
Yes, so one thing I'm not quite clear on, part of this contract is on a percentage basis, 60%. And the other part indicates a number of gallons, 21 million gallons or something, that there was a cap of some sort. Mr. Chairman Craig, you mentioned that, and it's underneath that threshold, but still using 60% of a pipeline that we funded. But you're underneath, am I correct on what I'm understanding here, George?
Mr. Chair, the way that on figure 3, the way this piping arrangement is depicted on the right side panel, the connection ultimately would be to a pipeline that was not water development funded. Okay. But because of this nuance of, does that force Board of Public Utilities to depend on infrastructure that water development did participate in? It kind of causes the office to ask that question. At what point reasonably would Board of Public Utilities be relying on the capacity that was built in the 36-inch pipeline? And so that's a key point to keep in mind, is the way that it is depicted right here, the connection is not to a pipeline that water development participated in the construction funding of. However, it begs the question, does that activity force Board of Public Utilities to rely upon Water Development Commission built facilities? So based on discussion with Board of Public Utilities and the capacity in the non-commission funded pipeline as 21 MGD, the office's opinion was, once you bust 21 MGD, you're relying on commission facilities, and therefore you are responsible for paying the commission.
But right now they're under that 21.
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
So it
their
seems
peak
to me
day.
that we haven't reached the threshold. I'm going to agree with the chairman of the commission that we haven't reached that threshold. And that's the way I would look at it right now. You're getting close, but right now I am. So that's it's kind of hard to understand. Can we in the future write up contracts that are a little more clear for us to understand in case this?
Mr. Chairman, they're usually very clear because we don't have, a system like Cheyenne. It's unique for the state, right? So that's what makes it complicated, and all the different how everything's plumbed together and what we've participated in, what we haven't, and what agreements looked like 30 years ago versus what they look like now and everything else. But
Commissioner Cott has a question.
I guess, are we, you just put, drew this pump station in the way you did just for the sake of discussion, but you could have easily drawn that pump station coming out of the 36. And when I heard from the discussion, there's less resistance in the 36, so the water's likely going to be coming out of the 36. Is that right, George? Or, I mean, can you dedicate, I mean, where is this water coming from? I mean, maybe that was the question that was asked down here. It's for sure it's coming out of Crystal Reservoir, but whether it's coming out of the 30 or the 36, we really don't know. Right? I mean, I guess if the pump station is coming directly out of those lines, we do know. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, through you. If we built this pump station and we're pulling 600 gallons per minute out of the 30-inch, obviously the 36-inch is going to pick up more of the slack. That's what's making it to Sherrard. That's just, simple hydraulics. So yes, the 36-inch would see some increase in flow. We could come up with some estimates for you on that, but yes, the 36-inch is going to work a little bit harder if we are pulling 600 gallons per minute out of the 30-inch. Maybe it's doing an extra 200 gallons per minute because of it, but yes, that they are hydraulically connected. Their whole goal is to get water to Sherrard.
And we're not asking to pay for that extra work in the 36-inch. No.
Mr. Chair.
I would like to just make a comment, John, and then I'll let you ask. I wanted a clarification at the beginning of your presentation. You talked about the cost if you were to share those costs with the commission. I think is it 60-40? Is that the agreed percentage?
The original project agreement on the 36 was a 60% grant from the commission. Yeah.
So 60% then would be paid back to the commission if you were to sell. If it became the agreement was that the proceeds of water sales were to be sold. And how does that affect your determination or decision on selling water to this gold mine? If the decision is made that you have to share the proceeds, how would that affect you moving forward?
Mr. Chair, that would be something we would take into consideration on the negotiations with the U.S. Gold on what price increase is needed to allow BOPU to receive the operational expenses and yet meet the obligation of reimbursing the Water Development Commission.
Yeah, I would agree with Frank. I mean, basically, we're going to have to, we already carry on all the O&M. We got to look at everything. But yeah, we'd have to determine with them, okay, are we going to pass through that 60% to the gold mine? Say, okay, if you want it, it's not going to cost you $1 now. It's going to be $1.60,
That's what,
Yeah.
so the next second
that-
part of that is how would that, do you anticipate that maybe stopping the project?
I do not know that. I'd have to.
No.
Somebody needs to mute it online.
I do.
If
I do not know how that would affect. We'd have to just talk with them, but we have been upfront with them and explained to them that is a possibility that it comes back. We have to may need to ask for more further. I think what is our raw water rate right now? $3.55 per thousand. So it's $3.55 per 1,000 gallons. So, I mean, we just have to figure that out and add on. So then when we sell any water, then we'd have to pay Water Development Commission back that 60% until that amount is repaid.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not sure online who's not muted, but their dog's barking in the background. So please mute yourself.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment then real quick. If they're using the pipeline, I think it's really tough that we don't keep working with what we made the sign, what we talked about on the contract. So if they're using 60% of the water's going through the 36-inch pipeline over the past, let's say 5 years, then that should be 60% of 60% then. I just don't think it's right that we let this slide.
Mr. Chair,
I think
this will be my last comment or question for it, but just kind of trying to wrap my brain around it. First, I'd like to see an economic impact of U.S. gold on Laramie County, because this isn't just about water. It's obvious that the board's going to pass that on. It's not going to affect the board, but what it's going to affect is other projects that want to come into Laramie County upstream of some water supply that they're going to have to pay additional money for, another cost, and we might lose a company like that. I don't see too much. My comment is I don't see too much difference than this when Microsoft came to town and built multiple facilities downstream that are still using these 30 and 36-inch pipes. How is that any different than Microsoft coming and taking 1 million gallons a day from that? We don't go back to Microsoft and say, hey, give us some more money. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
And just to help me gather more information before I develop too strong an opinion. So it seems to me that, and I'm just a relatively simple irrigator off the North Platte River, but when you run water down at least a earthen ditch, it has it deteriorates. You have to do operations and maintenance on it. So I'm just wondering, if I understand the Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities is responsible for the operations and maintenance, but it seems like, is it correct to say that the more water you put through it, the quicker the pipeline is going to deteriorate? Would that be an accurate statement? And therefore, could reduce the operational life of the pipeline? How does that work?
Mr. Chair, through you, yes, there is a point that if we have too high of flows, it will increase the wear and tear and degradation of the pipe. Typically for transmissions like mains like this, you don't want to exceed 3 to 5 feet per second, and we're well below that. So I would not say this would significantly impact the life of the pipeline.
Well, Mr. Chairman, maybe that's something we keep in mind. Keep in mind all the ways that this could impact the state-funded infrastructure that's being used here, and just encourage you to further develop the framework that you have now. It seems like that's a good starting point, but let's be aware of all the factors here. So, yep, thanks. That's all I got for now.
Thank you. So, Director, I'm not really sure how we want to proceed at this point. I started to try to emphasize that a few minutes ago, and there was an awful lot more comments. And you warned me this morning that this might be a long, drawn-out discussion, and you were right. But I'm wondering how, I guess, first thing is, how does a decision need to be made right now? And if not, would there be some room for negotiation on that 60%? I understand the Board of Public Utilities perspective that all the water's coming out of a line that the commission did not participate in. However, I also understand Senator Larson's point that they are utilizing other lines to supply for the water supply that we did participate in with the 60-40 grant split. So maybe there would be some or possibility for some discussion of less than 60% return to the commission, but still some return to the commission. I don't know if those are things that maybe you've already talked about. And I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that, but that certainly would not be able to be figured out today, I don't think.
Mr. Chairman, when it was explained earlier, the concept of net revenue versus gross revenue was used. Okay, am I correct on that? So a definition of net revenue, would that be after operating costs were pulled from this? Or how would net revenue be defined?
Mr. Chair, in response to the commissioner's question, I think we did two things there. And I don't know that I'm ultimately going to provide a really good answer to your question other than to say that I think the Board of Public Utilities folks inserted this idea of, maybe they would have to reapproach the gold mine and discuss what the water sales rate would be in order to be able to provide the commission back with the 60% that ultimately helps them achieve the financial rate that's necessary for them to do O&M and that sort of thing. Our project agreement with the 36-inch pipeline does not make a distinction between gross and net. All that agreement says is that state of Wyoming shall receive 60% of the revenues generated by the lease sale transfer ownership. I may have somebody that's going to overrule that guidance. Yeah, but that part is pertaining only to the portion where there's a loan.
Okay, yeah, stand corrected. Yeah, you're right.
I'm glad this is being recorded.
Got a comment. The way I see it is if you exceed the 30-inch and start using the 36-inch water, that's when the cost would come in for utilizing more than what the 30-inch could actually produce or transfer. So, and we haven't even met the threshold, right, George?
Mr. Chair, I think the question is going to be, we have not met the threshold of 21 MGD, and for the last 6 years, the peak day has not exceeded 21 MGD.
Thank you. And then, so if we haven't exceeded it, well, and if the gold mine, requires a lot more water flows, then once it starts going past the 30-inch capacity, that's what, in my opinion, that's where you would start picking up the cost for like a reimbursement. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Gary Crum again. Just a quick question. What's the city of Cheyenne plan to charge for this water?
Through you, Mr. Chair, currently rate is set at $3.55 per 1,000 gallons. Where it's an outside user, there'd be a 1.5 multiplier would be our starting point. Once we understand, what conditions we need to meet with you guys so that we are being fair. It's going to be part of the negotiations.
So a little over $5. And Mr. Chairman, a follow-up. Would you charge any different than if the state of Wyoming shared in the revenue stream?
Mr. Chair, through you, yes. So if we were, let's say 60% was going to the state of Wyoming, we would probably try to pass that on to the U.S. Gold so that we maintain our revenue and the costs we have associated with operating our system and meet our obligation for you guys.
Mr. Chairman, just one other question. Oh boy. The 36-inch line is being used regardless of whether U.S. Gold comes into whether you have an agreement with them to buy water. It's being used anyhow in your system, correct? Or is it sitting there idly?
Mr. Chair, through you, we're utilizing it at partial capacity because we want to keep it operational.
And so my thoughts on it, it still remains partial capacity, and it will until we get to this 21 million gallons per day, which they're nowhere near yet. So I guess I'm still where I was before, irregardless of whether they pick up another customer, we're still underneath this threshold. and the system is using the 36-inch line probably to keep your equipment and pumps and everything working without part of the system deteriorating, sitting idly.
So another thing that just complicates this, but I mean, this is just part of how we try to operate our system. We build in redundancy, right? And that's what we're looking at here. I mean, we could theoretically shut down lines and still feed Cheyenne, but we try to build redundancy. So if you lose a line, and so that's kind of what's coming back and not hindering us, but we're trying to make things redundant so that we have multiple feeds. Unfortunately, in this discussion right here, that's kind of a hindrance to us because we're trying to say, well, what molecule of water goes down to 36? What goes down to 30? We can get pretty, I mean, close, but we can't figure that down to, so that's what I think is the frustration here of trying to figure out exactly what's going. The only way you can do that is if you shut one of these off. And like Frank mentioned earlier, we want to keep both of these systems operational. Now, could we do some valving to possibly, we probably could, but we operate those fully charged and the water goes down. It's going to go down the path of least resistance. It's going to get to where it surcharges back up, and if it needs to send more down this other line, it's going to. And we try to build that redundancy throughout our whole system, not only in our lines coming into our plant, but the same thing when we get into our distribution system, so that if we have something go down, it back feeds, water can change direction, does all kinds of stuff, but so we keep the water supply going. Hopefully that makes a little sense, but that doesn't, that complicates it,
But the fact is, at the current system as is today, you could close the valves on the 36-inch line, still meet all of your demand, plus the demand for the sale of water to the gold mine. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's correct. At this time, for the last 6 years, we have not exceeded that 2021 MGD.
And I believe that's the reason that the office's proposal was to not charge when they came forward with this.
Well, and I would just add, I think what the office has come up with is really the most logical way to look at this. I think we're in agreement with that, the capacity of that 21 MGD. I mean, unless you really want to dig deeper, I'm not sure how we would determine, what that amount would be, but I think that's a logical approach of way to look at this.
So for the sake of finishing this process, and I believe we had a discussion, and I believe the commissioners had come to maybe not a complete agreement, but at least a reasonable path to move forward at Commissioner Anselmi Dalton's suggesting a motion that would mirror what the office has recommended. So I'm going to ask for further comment from Director Mead and our attorney, and then I think I'm going to close the discussion on this because I don't know that we're going to resolve it by sitting here in a round robin the rest of the day. Director.
Thanks, Mr. Chair and commissioners. Like George said, I'm glad this is being recorded because turns out I was right. And the contract does, the contract does specify in regard to the sale of water from the 36-inch pipe that the project agreement applies to, that the state shall receive 60% of the net revenues generated by the sale of the water. Now we're trying to hash out, the contract doesn't define, or the project agreement doesn't define net revenues. We're trying to hash out different scenarios. What does that mean exactly? But I don't want to tack on, I don't want to muddy this discussion anymore, but I think it needs to be reiterated that much of this discussion is stemming from this project agreement. This project agreement covers the 36-inch pipe. It does not cover the 30-inch pipe. There is no project agreement for the 30-inch pipe. Water Development was not a participant, like has been said many times, in that 30-inch pipe. This project agreement provides restrictions on the sale of water, and that's what we've been talking about here. This is where this comes from, where this 40-60 split comes from. It's all in this project agreement. It's not something that was just that we just came up with off the cuff or anything like that. So I think it's important that needs to be reiterated.
So I would like to ask one question regarding that. In your opinion, if their pump station is attached to the 30-inch line, does the Water Development Commission even have any claim to revenues from the sale of water?
Well, I don't want to put any words in City of Cheyenne's mouth or assume their position, but like we've talked about, you've got the two pipelines, the 30 and the 36. The project agreement puts restrictions on the sale of water using the 36-inch pipeline. So if they're using the 30-inch that we were not a participant in, and they're selling water to USA Gold from that 30-inch, well, I don't think we really have we don't have much of an argument there because we didn't participate in that. Now, once the 21 million, once that threshold is exceeded, and they're using the 36-inch pipe, which we were a participant in, we have this project agreement that sets forth, hey, if you're going to sell water, if you're going to use this project to sell water, here's what needs to happen. And that's what we've been talking about.
Thank you, Director.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest we bring two motions tomorrow. One is the office's recommendation at kind of what we've been talking about initially. The other motion would be to start charging them 60% immediately. And then you guys can fight it out in a vote.
All right.
We have
you, and I appreciate you drafting my motion that I proposed for tomorrow.
Yeah,
So,
and
and if you want to do the other one, that's great, because I understand their point.
So we have a path to move forward. Let's move on to our next item. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
for your
Senator
time.
Larson, for weighing in. The next item is our sponsor contingency account request for Evanston Transmission Pipeline. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Chairman, Commission, Select Water. Bill Brewer with the Deputy Director of Construction for Water Development. Okay. Thank you. Just to do a high level, the Commission is pretty familiar with the Sponsors Contingency Fund. We have quite a few new Select Water members. There are three different sponsors contingency funds for each of the accounts. So there's an account 1, account 2, and account 3 sponsors contingency. And these funds are set aside in the legislation when we get a project that comes in slightly over budget, that the commission has these funds available to adjust that budget. And as mentioned earlier, delaying projects generally just increases the costs. So the purpose of these accounts is to allow the commission, when we come in slightly over a budget, to award additional funds to that project and keep the project moving so that we do not delay it. Generally rebidding projects, even when we cut quite a bit out of a project and rebid it, they still seem to come in higher than the original bid. So that's the purpose of this. In this case, there's a couple different issues that went on. And I guess I should just throw out, this will be an account 1 sponsors contingency. I'll get exact numbers tomorrow. Tomorrow we will actually vote on this. Right now it's just the informational to get you hopefully through the most of the questions. I believe there's about 5 million in this account. I will have an exact, but Jason says 5 million is pretty close, but if you want, I'll have an exact number tomorrow before we vote on this. But in this case, this project dating way back to a level 2 study, this started out as a tank project to increase the size of a tank for the city of Evanston because their tank went dry basically late August or late July, August, heavy irrigation in the city of Evanston, their tank would go dry. So they believed they needed a larger tank. This came in for a level 2 study for a larger tank. During that study, it was determined that actually the tank was sized well, did not need any additional capacity. However, they couldn't keep it full. They couldn't fill it at that time. The pipeline that went from the or from the treatment plant up to the tank was also used as distribution. And with the heavy draws, basically there's no water left to actually fill the tank. So instead of putting in a new tank, the decision was to put in a parallel pipeline that would be a direct flow pipeline up to that tank, and then convert the old transmissions and distribution pipeline into just being a distribution pipeline, so that the water would go up to the tank, fill the tank, and then supply the neighborhood through the old transmission distribution line. During that study, it was determined that a 16-inch pipeline would be used for this project. During final design of the project, it was determined that, well, a 16 would work. We'd be pretty high in the velocities, towards the higher end of the velocities for this, which would allow us no future growth. And we do believe that at some point in time, Evanston will need maybe not a bigger tank, but at least a parallel tank up on this site. So the decision was back and forth, whether we put a 20-inch tank or pipeline in. We felt that was a little oversized. We end up settling that the engineering looked like an 18-inch line would meet current needs and then also meet some future expansion growth without being overkill. Basically, what we don't want to do is go so overkill that by the time we need a new tank, this pipeline's met its end of life and we end up having to replace it anyways. But we don't want to undersize it. So part of it was the cost increase here is that we increased the pipe size from what was in the original study. However, the town has also done quite a bit to curb the costs on this project. They've changed where that pipeline would tie in to the tank by changing that method and a little bit of stuff there. They saved about, I believe it was about $500,000 in expected construction costs. So there's been some cost increases, but there has also been some cost decreases throughout this project. But after we received bids, we are about $500,000 over budget right now. The city of Evanston has agreed that they can cover this with their own revenues. However, it would chew into their revenues pretty heavily. So they were able to award this contract to get that bid locked in. However, they're asking whether or not the commission can help with this overrun. The original project was funded at 6733. They're understanding that our new policy is more in the 50-50. So for the sponsor's contingency, they're asking for a 50-50 match for that overage. So in the end, they're essentially asking for additional $255,750, which is about 11% increase in the project costs. So that's where we are right now. The project manager, I believe, is still here. If there's any additional questions beyond what I can do. And I'm not sure if the sponsor is also online if we have questions for the sponsor.
Any questions for Bill? So the proposal, as I understand, is to approve the contingency fund request, and the contingency fund has how much? Did you say about approximately 5 million?
A little over 5 million in account one, sponsors contingency, and of that, a little over 5 million. We're asking for a little over 255,000.
Okay. Any questions or?
Just a comment, just like to thank the city of Evanston for be willing to go down to that 50-50 split rather than holding at that 67. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll consider this tomorrow.
Right. We'll actually vote. The vote will actually take place tomorrow. So essentially what we will need from Select Water is review and recommendation from Select Water, and then the commission will actually vote on what they choose to do.
Chairman, will the Select Water vote on the motion first? That would be the way this will work.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay.
Since you're in a recommendation to the commission, you guys would go first, yes.
Thank you.
And the really intent to have this discussion during the workshop is we've got a pretty full slate on the agenda tomorrow. So if we can get all the questions answered, then tomorrow we can just ask for the motion and move on to other things.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Director, the Middle Piney Reservoir water sales contract.
Okay, so I'll try to be as brief as possible here. So Middle Piney Reservoir is out west of Big Piney, Wyoming, about 30 miles up in the Bridger Teton National Forest. And we've been working with both what is now the Middle Piney Watershed Improvement District, which are the landowners and irrigators over in that valley that would stand to benefit from this project. I should say I have Chad Espenscheid, who is a member and representative of the Watershed Improvement District, who is joining us online as we speak, if you have any questions for him. But so over the past, I think we started reconstruction of this in 2018. We're at elevation 8,800, so the construction seasons are very short. But we are finishing that up. It's finished up. We started filling for the first time last year, provided some water to the irrigators last year, kind of in an experimental standpoint. They didn't go into regulation I think they're pretty used to going into regulation, so they were very happy with that. The intent all along has been, once we get this reconstructed, it's owned by the Forest Service because it's on Forest Service property. It was originally a privately developed dam from about 1900 to 1930. It took them quite a few years to get it built. It's got a 1919 water right, so it's pre-Colorado River compact because it's in a Colorado River. Compact is 1922, so it's something that the state is interested and always has been in reconstructing this. Over time, that facility, as it was built, it's built on an ancient landslide, or it was, still is, and again, using construction equipment from the early 1900s. It had some safety of dam issues. And as it dilapidated, the people that used it at the time weren't seeing a big benefit in it because they were further downstream than where the Middle Piney Watershed Improvement District users are currently. So they handed their shares over to the Forest Service from a period of about 1993 to 2000. And at that point, the Forest Service saw it more as a liability, and they were basically they locked the gate open, so there was no storage besides just natural attenuation on how quickly the outlet works could pass the water. But they also intended to eventually just decommission or breach the dam. So that would have drastically changed kind of what the runoff would have looked like in that valley. So state of Wyoming stepped in with the intent of this user group forming the Watershed Improvement District. That's all been done. Anyway, the intent has always been, and previous directors have had discussions with this, and I think over time with the updates, we've discussed this with the commission, but the idea was what is affordable for them to pay in a lump sum amount for that water each year. The water right is a little over 4,200 acre feet. The actual active capacity is about 3,344 acre feet. And so we came to the conclusion, $10,000 lump sum plus, instead of trying to manage and operate and maintain this reservoir from Cheyenne, that the Middle Piney Watershed Improvement District would take over that duty. So the day-to-day operations, purchasing, if we need a can of paint to paint a pipe or something like that, caulking, different things like that, they would take on that expense as well and utilize the folks within their district, designated folks that know exactly how to operate this to do that work for us. So it's a win-win situation. The state of Wyoming is preserving a pre-Colorado River compact right. It's a great tool for obviously the irrigators out there. They're high elevation. They grow basically grass hay, and they get about 3/4 ton per acre foot of water. So this is all culminated in the agreement that we have on page 13 in the e-notebook. And I'm just going to quickly walk through it for you. And if you have questions, speak up, or we can wait till I'm done walking through it. As I mentioned, the Forest Service owns it. We were able to reconstruct it through a special use permit. And the Forest Service required the state to be the applicant and holder of that special use permit instead of the Middle Piney Watershed Improvement District. That special use permit also has an operation and maintenance manual that was put together by the engineers that completed the design, as well as the emergency action plan associated with the dam if there were ever any issues with seepage or overtopping, that's the plan that you implement to make sure you're evacuating folks downstream because it is above the town of Big Piney. So those are all that O&M manual, which would need to be followed by the Middle Piney Watershed Improvement District, is contained by reference in this agreement, as well as the emergency action plan. And they're named in the emergency action plan on folks that would carry out certain duties. The Water Development Office is named in there. Let's see. I'm on page 2 of the agreement. And again, we're looking to sell 3,344 acre feet or whatever would be accruing to that active capacity in a given year. So Mother Nature is not always going to fill the reservoir. So they're going to owe us the $10,000 per year, regardless of if it fills completely or if it's 2,000 acre feet. I'm jumping around a little bit here, but the term of the contract is going to match the term of the special use permit. They are not in perpetuity. They're there for 30 years max. So that would go to 2047. And I mentioned the 10,000. There's also an escalator involved. So every 5 years from the effective date of we will look at what the consumer price index was for all, or U.S. city average for all items, basically the month that the contract originally was signed, and then we will look at that same number at the 5-year mark, and that it's basically 3/4 of the difference is what the cost of the water would then go up. We have this same clause in selling water out of High Savory to the Little Snake Water Conservancy District. And for example, the first 5 years it went up, I think, 5.6%. The second year, 5 years, it went up 6.13%. The last 5 years was pretty significantly higher. It was 16% because of all the inflation that we've seen. I also wanted to point out, not that I would ever anticipate this happening, but because this is somewhat of a subsidized project, obviously state dollars were used to reconstruct the dam, is that we don't want the water to be taken advantage of. And what I mean by that is we've got some clauses in here on page 5 that say the water is basically for the express purpose of providing supplemental agricultural irrigation within the district. There shall be no resale of the contract water by the shareholders. If a shareholder decides they don't need water in a given year, they will relinquish that back to the district. The district would then resell it at the original cost and then compensate the original shareholder for that money. So we're not going to be jacking up the price and trying to sell it for a lot more money to make, a windfall off of a state project. So that's in there as well. And because this is high elevation, we've got in here July 10th of every year, we'll determine what water is accumulated to the active space. If there, for some reason, is no water, let's say there's a safety of dams issue or something, and they've paid for the water in a given year, but we weren't able to store any water, then we would credit that amount, the $10,000 for the first 5 years, to the next year's payment. And then if for some reason after July 10th, again, we have some issue where we have to evacuate some water, and if there was 3,344 acre feet available on July 10th and we can only give them 1,000 for some reason, then we would prorate and credit that prorated amount to the next year. But in a typical year, they're going to pay the amount for whatever accumulates to the reservoir. That pretty much covers it. I would ask if there's any questions for me or for Chad Espenscheid with the Middle Piney Watershed Improvement District. The only other quick thing I would say is this is a new facility for both our office and for the district. So it's going to take some years to get a better understanding of how it's going to operate, what the expenses might be to operate it. So this is our first cut at this agreement. I wouldn't be surprised, no different than High Savory. We came back and amended the agreement at one point in time to, reflect what we learned over a couple of years on how it would actually operate. So.
Thank you, Director. Any questions?
Thank you. Just a quick question. What is the rationale for the escalator, the cost of living escalator to be capped at 75% of the CPI. What's the rationale for that 75%?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Chestick, that's a good question. I simply took that from a previous, like I mentioned, the High Savory contract with the Little Snake Water Conservancy District. And I was trying to be consistent. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Clinton? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. So the last item, I think, is construction closeout memos, as we'll discuss tomorrow, I assume, but it's mostly informational. Is that correct?
Correct. The closeout memos are informational for the commission. There's no action required on them, so we figured we'd slide them in today on the workshop when you know, because there wasn't any action required. Right. So these are pretty simple, so I'll try to run through them fairly quickly but accurately. If you have any questions, please ask them as they come up. But I guess again, Chairman and Commission Select Water, Bill Brewer with Deputy Director of Construction, do these closeout memos. So we have 4 closeout memos. The first one is the Cottonwood Irrigation District's Cottonwood Irrigation District Pipeline Replacement 2022. This replaced lateral L7 upstream of the PRV to its junction at L22, and Jeffrey Kaiser was the project manager on this. This was a 67% grant, 33% loan project. The sponsor also obtained BOR funding. So in the end, we paid a 6733 percentage of our share. However, we did not pay 6733 of the entire project because there was also Bureau Reclamation funds involved. The engineer for this project was Sunrise Engineering. He completed the engineering within a reasonable budget. They came in at about 19.2% of the project, which is generally pretty reasonable engineering cost. Construction was completed by Vanderburg Excavation. We received 3 bids on this project. The bids ranged from $1.2 to $2.3 million for the work, which the original bids were slightly under the engineer's estimate. After final change orders and stuff, came in right about where the engineer's estimate had been originally. So in the end, the project ended up about 1.7 million, which was slightly over the original budget, but with the BOR funds involved, we will end up reverting a little over $350,000 on this project that will go back into account 2. So any questions on Cottonwood? Okay. So moving on, next project is the Glen Rock Transmission Pipeline from 2020. For the town of Glen Rock, this replaced an aging ductile iron pipeline with new PVC. This project dates back far enough that I was the original project manager on it. When I moved up to deputy director, it went to Ken Mitchell. When Ken Mitchell left us to go to the military department, I took it back and closed it out. This project was won a couple years ago. There's excess ARPA funds left over that were kind of raked back by SLIB and given to the governor to redistribute. We had 8 projects that we proposed to the governor as being good projects to use those funds. We received about 23 million through that, which we replaced water development funds with those ARPA funds. In this case, this project should have presented us bills before that happened. However, they had not. They're about 6 months behind in billing us, which worked to our advantage because we never spent any water development money on this project. So the engineer on this project was CEPI, and the low bidder was Adrian Hunt Construction. We received 2 bids on this project. The project came in under the engineer's estimate and ultimately would have been under our overall budget. However, because these were ARPA funds and we were relatively directed to use them, because other words, it was going to go back to the federal government, the original project broke out eligible versus ineligible. So we had our normal eligible water development costs. However, the ARPA funds were eligible to be used on anything that SRF considered eligible, which also goes into distribution and some treatment, some other things that we normally couldn't pay for. However, because they were ARPA funds, we did have those extra funds. Some of those funds were used to cover some of those SRF eligible items we normally wouldn't, to use up all the ARPA funds rather than revert those funds back to the federal government. So in the end, all the money was spent. However, as I said, it was ARPA funds, and all of the water development funds were reverted back to our account. So it's a little more complicated one, but other than that, okay, I'll move on here. Next project is the Kirby Ditch Irrigation Distribution Pipeline 2020 project. This was a ditch to pipeline project. This ditch runs along a very steep bank, which occasionally collapses into the ditch and plugs up the ditch, and then the ditch overflows into the highway. So this is a very good project for multiple reasons to convert ditch to pipe. Normally, we're converting ditch to pipe for water loss purposes. In this case, it both works as water loss, and it also means that we're not collapsing this side slope, filling in the canal, and then flooding the roadway when that canal bursts, which sounded like it happened about every 5 years that this happened, and we partially washed out a county road, or the district did. This was, again, a 67.33% grant loan project. Sage Civil Engineering was the engineer on the project. Wilson Brothers Construction was the low bidder. We received 4 bids on this project that ranged from about $1.5 to $2.1 million, which came in. The engineer's estimate was a little under $2.1 million. We did end up with 3 change orders throughout this project for slight things. However, we still ended up under the engineer's original estimated budget. So we will be reverting about $264,000 to account 2. In addition to that, the sponsor was also able to obtain some BOR Smart Water funds. And then therefore, at the end of the project, they paid off their loan. So not only did we revert back some funds, the loan was paid off at the end. So we have all that money back again also. So any questions on this one?
Bill, I got a question. What's the total amount being reverted back to the office?
I'll say that after I do the last one. I do have a total on the bottom of this one, what we're reverting back. So, okay. If that's okay. I don't want to. Okay. So moving on to the last project here. This is the level for the Level Irrigation District. This is the Level Montclair lateral phase 2 project. This converted 9,900 feet of irrigation canal to pipe. Jeff Kaiser was the manager on this project. The original appropriation on this project was $991,000. In this project was a materials only project. And for some of the select water members who may not be familiar with our materials only, a lot of these irrigation districts have their staff and everything that work all summer, keeping their ditches and their everything working well. In the winter, what they do is they have those same workers that are very familiar with working with heavy equipment and keeping their ditches open, do ditch rehab, and we cover the cost of the materials. They cover the cost of all the engineering, all the labor, all the equipment. So it's kind of a win-win. We get a cheaper project because we're only paying for the materials. They get to keep their staff busy during the winter so they don't lay people off and lose them. So that's the way this project was. So we only paid for the materials. So in this case, the engineer was Prior Mountain Engineering. As I said, the sponsor covers all of those engineering costs. The low bidder in this case was Northwest Pipe Fittings, which just supplied the materials for the project. We did only receive one bid, but it was under the engineer's original estimate. There's miscellaneous costs in here, and that's usually related to rebar and concrete. Simply, most of these small districts, there is only one concrete supplier in the area, so you can't really get bids from them. You get whatever the price is that day you order a truckload of concrete. But in the end, we will, for this project, revert about $155,000, and that will also go back to account 2. So before I go to totals, is there any questions on this specific project? Okay, so between these 4 projects, like I said, one project was ARPA replacement, so that was an account 2 municipal project. In that case, about $958,000 was reverted to our accounts because we did not use it. We use those ARPA funds. For the 3 other projects that we did use water development funds, we are looking at reverting about $773,000 back to account 2. And then also that one district paid off their loan, which was another $675,000 loan paid back. So we're looking at, not counting that ARPA replacement project, we're looking at about $1.45 million reverted back to account 2 that we will be able to redistribute this fall. So. Okay.
Any questions for Bill? Thank you, Bill. Next thing on the agenda is the summer workshop and meeting and tour.
Mr. Chairman, I think everybody knows we're going to the Rock Springs area. Commissioner Cott, you want to give an update?
Just happy to give an update that the tour will be on August 6th. Well, that's a Wednesday, I believe. And that will be to the 3 Trona mines. Which was the old FMC mine, or was the old FMC mine, Tata, and Solvay. We had 4 mines lined up, but one mine could not run tours on that day. So, but those 3 mines will easily take the 27 people that have registered. I want to thank Barry and Sarah for their work on this. We've been working on this since September of last year. It's been quite an ordeal trying to have 3 mines involved in one tour. So we look forward to this. We'll start early on that Wednesday morning, probably leaving the Holiday Inn area at 6:15. We have to be at 2 of the mines no later than 7 o'clock. So we need to get there. Transportation will be, so there'll be roughly 9 people going to each mine. So we can easily accommodate the transportation in our personal vehicles. We can work that out as that day comes closer. Lunch will be provided at each mine site. There'll be an underground tour, a lunch, and then an above ground tour at each mine. And then we'll rendezvous back at the Holiday Inn, and it should be a great time. We've communicated all this information to Soda Ash, which is coordinating the mine tours for us. So with that, I turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that I think Mark and I have discussed, we'll go ahead and I'll prepare something for the breakfast for the
that's right. I'm
people,
sorry, Lisa.
so that they won't have to worry. They can it'll be a bagged thing for people to take. We do have a block of rooms, and I talked to the chair for Select Water. They're welcome to stay where they want. Also, I could send them up at the rate at the Holiday, and they could have the LSO people make their reservations for them. And that way we can all leave from the same spot that morning if it's easier. And then we'll work on something like for dinner there, perhaps, or maybe somewhere local. We can figure that out with you, director, and with our chair. So whatever you want to do, we just want to make sure everyone has a nice time, and that we can all get together and enjoy it. And thanks a lot to Commissioner Cott for taking the laboring oar, and I'll be happy to use my private vehicle. And we could find some other ones too. So I think we'll be okay on vehicles.
I
thank
might
you.
just add to some of the new Select Water Committee members. So every August meeting, we go somewhere else in the state. Most of the time, we're looking at water development projects to kind of get everybody an understanding of on the ground what types of projects we do. And, something interesting this year, Commissioner Cott was gracious enough to set up this Trona Mine tour. It's an all-day thing, so it's really going to be looking at that and really not other water development projects. So it's a little unusual, but I would say Trona mining contributes to mineral severance taxes, and that's part of the money that funds our program. So, yeah,
Good
we
connection.
appreciate that.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions, comments? So we'll move on to the discussion
Chairman.
portion of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, down
Mr.
here,
Jones.
Lee. Normally, the Select Water lines up their own motels. We can contact LSO and see if they want to do it that way, but we'd have to talk to them. Yeah. So anyway, just so you know.
The only other thing I'd say for discussion, again, for folks that are new, is that all of our applications that have come in for planning studies, the deadline was March 1st, and it is every year. So we've taken the applications, we've gone out, we've assigned them to project managers, assigned them to commissioners, gone out and met with the different applicants to understand what they're looking to do. They brought that information back to the office. We contemplated all that, put that together into a recommendation. So the first agenda item that we're going to tackle tomorrow are all those recommendations, and we invite our sponsors to come down and help answer questions that the body might have on each individual study that they're requesting. So when you show up tomorrow, the room's probably going to be full. And we also have engineering consultants that will eventually do the work for us under contract, and they tend to show up as well to understand what might be coming out and who they might want to go talk to as far as sponsors. So I just didn't want to surprise anybody that the room will probably be full when we show up tomorrow morning. And we'll need to be judicious. Obviously, we want to get a good understanding and make sure that they're good studies that we're going to recommend, because they'll eventually end up in the omnibus planning bill. But there are quite a few, and we've got a good size agenda. So we'll be judicious as we can to keep everything moving along. So
Thank you, Director.
all right.
I have a comment that I'd like to make regarding our time tomorrow. We have a really full agenda. We spent an awful lot of time on the Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities issue, and we're going to have two motions to consider tomorrow. One will be to request some form of compensation, and I think that has to be based on a percentage that the director and George will put into the motion. And then there will be one to accept their initial recommendation to allow the Board of Public Utilities to sell the water up to the 21.5 million or 21 million, whatever that number was. So I'd like all of you this evening to consider how you want to vote on those. I sensed some probably not necessarily agreement between all of us of commissioners. I think each of us probably has their own opinion. But one thing I would like to ask all of you to do this evening is to maybe take just a minute to either get on the computer, or if you have your operating criteria manual, and look at the original 1975 legislation that we operate under to this day. And that first paragraph that I read, as I read it today, doesn't say anything about recovering costs. However, there may be other language later in this book. I certainly didn't have time to look all the way back through there. I just think it's worth at least considering that as you're making your decision how you're going to vote tomorrow. I'm not trying to steer anyone in any direction necessarily. I have my own opinions on it, and to be honest with you, I'm kind of split. So anyway, that's all I had to say on that. And Director, did you want to discuss the Levitt Reservoir? We talked about that a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, considering it's past 5, I think we could save that for August, and we can give, we'll add on the progress between now and then. Basically, Levitt Reservoir up in the Bighorn Basin is under construction. We're in year 3 of construction. We were going to give it a little update, but I think we can wait till August and we'll show you how much more has been built by then. But it should be done hopefully by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the other thing I wanted to add on that Board of Public Utilities is I'm not going to allow comments on that tomorrow. I don't think it's appropriate. We beat that horse to death today. Is that acceptable to everyone? If everyone disagrees with me, speak up.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's, I'm down here. Oh, you've got, I think go that way first.
Commissioner.
I, going back to the accounting side and the fact that it says net, I think we're talking and discussing the wrong thing. So basing a motion or a decision on the wrong thing, I've done some calculations and I would like to sit with George or Jason or whomever wants to sit with me and talk about what I think is a kind of a reasonable way to think about net sales. And if we do that, then I'm fine. But I don't know. It just would pain me to make a decision based on what I believe is the wrong information.
Mr. Chairman, on not allowing discussion, I think one of the purposes of public meeting is discussion, but I think I would certainly respect your judgment on when discussion would end, and encouraging people to be very precise about their discussion. But to say no discussion, I'm not necessarily in favor of that.
Thank you, Senator Cott. You're probably right in that regard. I know there was an awful lot of discussion today, and it's difficult. You've been chair to sit in this seat, keep track of everything going on, and know when to drop the hammer and say we're done. Because lots of people think, well, I got cut off and I didn't have opportunity to voice my opinion. And I certainly don't want to have someone cut off that had something that was pertinent. What I would ask, if we are going to have discussion, is you limit your comments and keep them to the facts and what we know. I think that Commissioner Hosey might be, since he's an accountant, a person to lean on a little bit with figuring out how to charge if that's the direction that we go. But I don't know if George and Jason want to work after hours to do that. That's up to them. And
we're used to it.
For the rest of the commissioners, if anyone wants to sit in, if Todd is agreeable to work with them, I would encourage you to do it. I'm not going to. I will leave it at that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the only other thing I'd say is we will consider that under item 14, other items requiring commission action tomorrow. So depending on when we get to that, we'll probably determine how much discussion folks want to have at that time.
Do you have rooms for tomorrow night for us?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
just maybe no new or repeated discussion. If you made a point today, don't repeat it tomorrow. That's usually a good way of doing it. And if there's something new you come up with between now and then, that should be on the table. But we don't need a rehash. It's something we already hashed.
Thank you. I guess one other thing to remember is this is a commission item. Select Water certainly ask you to weigh in if it's important, but the burden is on our shoulders to make this decision. So. Adjourned? Adjourned.